It is Wednesday, July 30th. It is a great day to pay Terry McLaurin if you are the Washington Commanders. Welcome into the Kevin Sheehan Show. Denton Day sitting in for Kevin here on the Team 980. You can tweet me at the Denton Day. In a world in the NFL where everybody seems to know everybody, guys work out with one another, maybe you played with one another, you have a teammate that was teammates with somebody. Everybody knows everybody, right? If I'm Terry McLaurin, I might be side-eyeing Courtland Sutton a little bit. If I'm Buddy Baker, the agent of Terry McLaurin, I don't know who the agent of Courtland Sutton is, but I'm side-eyeing him a little bit, him or her. Maybe it's multiple people. Again, I don't know the background of Courtland Sutton and his agency and his representation. But I'm still hitting them with a little bit of that bombastic side eye the next time that these two guys come across one another. Why do I say that? We have spent a majority of the week, and we will continue to spend a lot of time on this channel, on this station, discussing Terry and his contract extension, or as it currently stands, the lack of contract extension, until pen finally hits paper. This is the overarching storyline of camp right now. He is not there. Well, he is there, but he's not practicing. We want him to practice because we want 2025 to be better than 2024. High bar, but we want that, right? That's why some of the moves were made this offseason with Debo, Laramie, Tunsil, etc. Well, Courtland Sutton got paid 2 days ago. He's a 29-year-old wide receiver that turns 30. You look at those numbers and you say, well, Terry's probably going to get something similar to that. From a production standpoint, last year, the numbers were similar. Terry led in most categories, but the numbers were still similar outside of touchdowns, in which there was a wide gap. Terry had 13 and Sutton, I believe, had 8. So there's a big gap in touchdowns, but Terry led small portions everywhere else. Not enough to justify $10 more million per year, $7 more million per year until Courtland Sutton decided to talk about his contract. And this is why, if I'm Terry, I'm side-eyeing him a little bit. If I'm Buddy Baker, I'm side-eyeing the agency a little bit. Because what Courtland Sutton said is that he left money on the table. He was doing, I believe this was his media availability. When you get a contract, you talk. So he was doing some media availability after the contract, and he said he was 1,000% aware of the contracts that Denver needed to sign in the future, and that played a role in him taking slightly less money, 1,000%. And then he continued to say, it wasn't about me. At the end of the day, yes, we work in a business of compensation. There's talent in that locker room, guys that are coming up that are trying to get their second contract. I was blessed to be able to get my third. They put the work in just the same way as I have, and some of those guys have more accolades than I have when it comes to the NFL side of things. And to be able to sign that deal that we did, it gives us a chance to keep those guys around, end quote. Very good messaging from Courtland Sutton. Like, I'm happy for the people out in Denver. I'm happy for those guys on that Denver Bronco roster that are looking to get their second contract. But boy, this really hurts Terry, doesn't it? Because we spent literally all of yesterday. All right, I think Terry is X amount better than Courtland Sutton. How does that translate to the financials? I thought that Terry was in the neighborhood of $5 million more, better, at least, than Courtland Sutton is. Well, he just said he left money on the table. How much money did you leave on the table? Because if he left $2 million per year, he's on a 4-year, $92 million contract. That's roughly about $23 million per year. $41 million of that $92 million is guaranteed. How much money did you leave on the table? If you left about $1 million, all right, this is performative. You're maybe doing a little too much. If they offered you 24 and you said, no, actually, guys, I'll take 23, you're being performative. And, you're just doing the song and dance, and Denver's going to love you, but this is performative. Now, if you left $2 or $3 million, that's a different conversation. If he got 23, but he could have gotten 25 or 26, and we know that Terry is better than Courtland Sutton, And if he's getting potentially $26 million, it's very easy to point and say, all right, well, if he's getting 26, we think that our guy 17 is better than Courtland Sutton. It's very feasible to then offer Terry 28, which 28 is the number that I believe the contract should be, 28 with slightly higher guarantees. That's how you take care of a guy. You're not going to give him $30 million. I think that feels pretty safe to say at this point. I would be stunned if whenever the contract comes into fruition, which hopefully is sooner rather than later. I mean, they are off today. And you know what would be a great use of an off day? Negotiating. That's just me. He's not going to get 30, but 28 is a great deal. But because Sutton got 23, that's effectively 20, like roughly about 20% more per year. Is Terry 20% better than Courtland Sutton? And then on top of that, do you have the numbers to suggest that Terry is 20% better than Courtland Sutton? And that, I think, is hurting Terry's case for this, and it's hurting the agent's case for this, because from a statistical standpoint, there aren't a lot of numbers that would suggest Terry is 20% better than Courtland Sutton, and he's getting $23 million. He took a pay cut so they being Denver, could keep a bunch of dudes who are coming up on the second contract. Now, another thing that Terry does have in his benefit with this is that there are not a lot of guys on this Washington roster right now, thank you, Ron Rivera, that are going to be up for second contracts coming up soon. A lot of the guys that they have signed in the Adam Peters and Dan Quinn era have very much been on mercenary contracts, as I call it. It's a one-year deal, a prove-it deal. If you're good, we'll do it again. That's one of the main reasons that this roster is as old as it is, and it's an old roster comparatively to a bunch of the other rosters in the NFL. But the benefit is you don't have a lot of second-year deals or second contracts, I should say, coming up for a lot of the members on this roster. So if you're Terry, you're saying, hey, like he took these deals because his team has drafted well in the past 4 or 5 years, which this team has not. That's not a dig at Adam Peters. Adam Peters wasn't here to draft that well. Although they will, I'm sure, start preparing contracts for like a Mikey and a Brandon. But you're not putting as much emphasis on a Sanderson contract in year number 2 and a Brandon Coleman contract in year number 2 as you are Jayden Daniels. Pretty good idea that Jayden is the truth. We'd like to see a little bit more, and still a Brandon Coleman contract and a potential Mikey Sanderson contract should not dissuade you from paying Terry now. That's not how that's going to work. So he does have that in his corner. But because Sutton took less money, and because he said these things, and Terry is viewed as this team-first guy, everything about being a Commander is everything that Terry is. You're looking at him now, if you're the front office, saying, hey, man, like, what's up? That guy in Denver over there is taking less money to be a part of the team so we can keep this whole collective together, and you seem to be taking a very different approach. Now, we're going to pause real quick here, because what I do not want to happen is for people to take some of the comments in the way that I have started the show and saying that Terry should take a very team-friendly deal. That is not what I'm saying. I am not of the belief that Terry should take a $4 or $5 million pay cut just because somebody else did. However, I am also not saying that Terry should get $33 million just because Pittsburgh was dumb enough to pay DK Metcalf $33 million. If you don't follow me on Twitter, one, what's up? How we doing? Follow me at The Denton Day. I tweeted this out yesterday. Somebody put together a graphic comparing DK Metcalf and Terry McLaurin. This was that Sleepers account, Sleepers Commanders. They put together a graphic. This is a career graphic. And you look at a lot of these numbers, and Terry leads DK Metcalf in a majority of these numbers. They both have played 97 games. Terry has about 22 more receptions. He has about 50 more yards, which 50 more yards over the course of 22 receptions is not exactly a good number. But alas, I'm just reading what the graphic says. He has 22 more yards. DK averages more yards per catch. Obviously, I just mentioned that, numbers and all that. DK has 10 more touchdown receptions than Terry. The touchdown, I'll get back to that. But we are coming back to the touchdowns thing because I do think this is important. And then it gets to like rushing stats. I don't care about rushing stats. There's like fantasy points in here too. I don't care about fantasy points. Terry has more receptions. He has more yards in as many games as DK Metcalf, but his average is below that of DK Metcalf. What I took away from this graphic comparing these two guys, and we are comparing these two guys in particular because 2 days ago, Adam Schefter got on Pat McAfee and said that Terry is looking for a contract that is significantly more than DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf is on a 4-year, $132 million extension. In Pittsburgh, that is roughly $33 million per year AAV. However, $60 million of that is guaranteed. So Terry, according to Schefter, is looking for more than DK. What I took away from this is that DK Metcalf is vastly overpaid. Vastly overpaid. Pittsburgh, for whatever the reason is, and this is unique because when you generally think of well-run organizations in this league, it feels like Pittsburgh is at the top of that list because they've been so perennially good for such a long time. The contract they paid DK Metcalf was an asinine contract, and they fell into this flawed idea of market value and really what is desperation more than anything. When they they traded for DK and then signed him to this extension, I am under the belief that they knew Aaron Rodgers was going to come and be their quarterback. He just had not signed yet. Aaron Rodgers is going to be Aaron Rodgers. It took them weeks to sign after DK got there, but they knew Aaron's going to be our guy. We are going to pair DK Metcalf with Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, though, in 2025 is in every sense of the word a bridge quarterback. Is he a bad quarterback? No. Statistically, he was fine last year, but he is not one of the greats in today's NFL. He is a bridge quarterback, but Pittsburgh does not have anybody on the other side of the bridge. If you have a bridge quarterback with nobody on the other side of the bridge, unless you really love Will Howard, which if you really love Will Howard, more power to you. I like him. Interviewed him a bunch of times on the college show that I do on Sirius. Really good dude. I don't know that he is a bridge. He is the guy that should be on the other side of that bridge for Pittsburgh. So they have a bridge quarterback, and they're deciding to pay DK Metcalf $33 million per year. That is idiotic. And if I'm Adam Peters, why on earth would I let someone's idiotic decision in Pittsburgh impact the way that I need to pay somebody? We need to do things the way that we need to do things. We are going to do things the way that our analytics team suggests that we are going to do things. And if you're not going to follow the analytics team 1,000%, you're going to take their information. You are going to match that up with the non-analytic information. And in the non-analytic information, Terry passes with flying colors. He's been a great dude. He means a ton to the fans, and he represents everything about the culture that you were trying to build here. He is a great human being. So he passes everything on the non-analytics side, what we call the intangibles, flying colors. On the analytics stuff, though, with the numbers, it gets a little dicey. And you start to get a little weary. And if Sutton is getting 23, Terry is not nearly, I mean, what is that? If he's getting 23 and he wants 33, that's $10 million more. From a percentage stance, that's like 33% more. Not exactly. I don't have a calculator. I'm sorry. But that's about 33% more than what Courtland Sutton is getting. Terry's a really good player. He's not 33% better than Courtland Sutton. And there's no number that you can send to me on Twitter or when we open up phone lines coming up here, 301-230-0980. There is no number that you can give me that would suggest he is 33% better than Courtland Sutton. His touchdown numbers this year were fantastic. I'd love the touchdown numbers, but touchdowns from year to year are very frugal in the NFL. You could have 13 one year, you could have 6 the next. And that's a 7-touchdown drop-off. That is a massive drop-off. You look at the consistency of his yardage, and his yardage consistency is certainly there. The problem is he's never gone over 1,200 yards. And celebrating 1,000 yards in a 17-game season is hilarious to me because that's less than 60 yards per game. That's not top 10 numbers. That is not, if you're not going over 1,200 yards, why would you get paid at a top 10 level? So it gets very tough with the analytics. The analytics drop him a little bit more in the direction of Courtland Sutton. The intangibles lift him There's a dude in the chat saying that Terry's not a hero because he lied about the ankle injury. My brother in Christ, the team told him to do that. Like, can we not be idiots about this? The team is understanding of this. They know the business side. Terry knows the business side. They're like, if you're not going to be here, we're going to give you some sort of reason to not be here. And they're say, hey, ankle situation, get some treatment, be around, do all those sorts of things. We understand. This is not the first rodeo for Adam Peters or the coaching staff. That's the benefit of having a bunch of dudes that have been around for forever. If you're not watching us on YouTube, you can watch us on YouTube. I got the chat pulled up in front of me. We're on Twitter as well. Watch us there. I interact with the chat. All right. Subscribe to YouTube if you're not already. The touchdowns, though, are a little frugal. So I don't think that you can pay him from touchdowns alone. And that's why there seems to be an impasse here. I looked at Spot Rack. They do a market value thing. And Max, I have to be honest. Generally speaking, I don't know how much I love like Spot Rack's market value, because at one point, I'm 100% serious with this. Don't laugh. You're going to laugh, but don't laugh. At one point, they said Taylor Heineke was worth $20 million a year.
Man.
So I'm like, I don't know how I feel about this.
To some, he is. To some, he still is.
That is true, but they don't have $20 million to pay him.
That's right.
The Spot Rack market value for Terry McLaurin is under $25 million per year. They have it about 24.75 because he's a 29-year-old wide receiver. And the guys that are in front of him, in terms of the payment, they all have one thing, or a majority of them have one thing, and that is they have a 1,200-yard season. Terry does not. He could have this year. Yeah, there were some games, that New Orleans game you look at and say, man, like there was literally 3 passes could have taken him to 1,200 yards in that. He could have had 4 touchdowns in that particular game. 3 passes would have gotten him to 1,200 yards. That Atlanta game where he was effectively a non-factor because they decided to bracket him. They put their best corner and safety help over the top. They bracketed Terry, and they said, you are not catching a pass. And then Jayden Daniels went God mode and beat them anyway. But that potentially would have gotten him closer to 1,200 yards. He's never hit that mark. He's been really close in 2022. He had 1,191 yards, but he's never gone over 1,200 yards. You got to go over 1,200 yards if you want $30 million per year. You have to hit that 1,200-yard mark, because everybody else that is hitting $30 million per year, whether it's A.J. Brown, I mean, Garrett Wilson is not, but this is a second contract, right? So Garrett Wilson, because it's a second contract and they understand that they kind of know how the business is. Like if Terry had just played with Jayden and this was a second contract, the deal would have been signed long ago. So Garrett has not gone over 1,200 yards, but he's gone over 1,000 yards in 3 of the years, and he had a quarterback that couldn't throw 5 yards. So Garrett Wilson is the lone exception, but again, he's 25 and he just turned 25. His current deal is going to take him to where Terry is now with 29 going into year number 30. It's really, really wonky. I know there's a lot of intricacies in this. I know. But Cortland Sutton saying I took less money did not help the case of Terry McLaurin. Your thoughts, 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Steve Wyche, NFL Network, joins us in 15 minutes, but your chance to weigh in on the Terry McLaurin contract next. It's the Kevin Sheehan Show with Dente, sitting in for Kevin on the Team 980. It's the Kevin Sheehan Show. Denton Day sitting in for Kevin here on the Team 980. At the Denton Day on Twitter. Steve Wyche going to join us in 10 minutes here from NFL Network. He was out at Commanders training camp as a part of NFL Network's training camp tours. So we will get his thoughts on what he saw up close and personal. And, you know, they give some of those national guys just a little bit more access, or at least closer access than they do sometimes to the local guys. So Steve Wyche will be with us here in about 10 minutes on the Kevin Sheehan Show. Our current question is just weighing in on this discrepancy between Terry and Courtland Sutton. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Courtland Sutton said yesterday that he took less money. Now, we spent all of yesterday trying to find the middle ground between Courtland Sutton and DK Metcalf. Adam Schefter says that Terry wants a number similar, if not bigger, than DK Metcalf's. That's a terrible idea because DK Metcalf is wickedly overpaid. Pittsburgh decided to be silly geese about it. They want to be a silly goose. Let them be a silly goose. I'm good. Like, I don't need that. Washington, Adam Peters is not going to, and I love this about Adam Peters. Adam Peters ain't going to be strong-armed by some other idiot, right? He's just not going to do it. So they're not going to bite on this. He gets to get paid the same amount as DK does, but they're probably going to pay him more than Courtland Sutton. With Sutton leaving money on the table, that becomes a very complex discussion. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Max, let's spot up EJ in DC. EJ, you are on 980. What's going on?
Thanks for taking my call.
Of course.
And for one, it's to me, for you to say DK Metcalf is grossly overpaid. These guys go out there and risk their life every day. You're worth what a team is going to pay you, not what you think that they're worth. We as fans, we sit back and watch on TV. It's a game to us. To them, that's a business. And in business, whatever someone's willing to pay you, that's your worth. Courtland Sutton, his name is Courtland Sutton. He plays in Denver. Terry McLaurin plays in D.C. He has nothing to do with Courtland Sutton. Courtland Sutton took a team-friendly deal. That was Courtland Sutton's business.
EJ, here's the thing. Here's the thing. They are going to use that, though, as leverage. That's how negotiations work. So because he took a team-friendly deal, they're going to point and say, well, he's 29 years old, has similar numbers. He's getting this. We'll give you a little bit more, but because he took that team-friendly deal, that does put a little bit of a cap on what they're going to pay Terry. If it didn't, the deal would be signed by now.
I can't say that because if you're not going to pay him, somebody else will pay him. And then if Terry goes out in minicamp and tears Achilles, right, and the deal was on the table but it ain't been signed yet, are they going to give him a team-friendly, a player-friendly deal and say, Terry, you know what, because you've been good to us, this is what we're going to do to you. We're going to give you the same contract. What do you think about that? Are they going to give him the same contract every year?
No, they would not, but I appreciate the call, EJ. I don't know if I'm not upset that Terry is not out there. I understand why he's not out there because of everything that you just said. Isaiah likely was in the neighborhood of a contract extension. That's what we got yesterday. And then he, messed up his ankle and he's hurt now. I don't know what that number is going to look like. I agree with Terry not being out there, but here's where I think you are vastly wrong. I don't know that another team would pay him as much as Washington would. And that is exclusively to me why he has not asked for a trade, because he is acutely aware, outside of him wanting to be here. I believe when Terry says, I want to be here, I believe him. But outside of that, if he thought a team was going to pay him as much as Washington would, he would have asked for a trade. If this was about money and feeling, very disrespected and not feeling properly valued, if he thought someone else would pay him way more money, the same kind of money that apparently he is asking for, which is, according to Adam Schefter, in the DK Metcalf zip code, if he thought somebody else would do that, he would have asked for a trade. And he has not asked for a trade. It's because no one is going to meet that mark. The best chance for Terry to get paid the most amount of money is and always will be here in Washington. Because he's still, you take into consideration the things that he has done for the course of the organization. That has to matter at least a little bit. Not a lot of it. Some of the numbers that we have been throwing out over the past few months, have been a little a little over the top. I mean, at one point, someone said $36 million, as if that was any sort of real chance of that happening. It was never going to be $36 million. The cap was always, to me, around 31 or 32. You hope that you get there. But now that I have become, I've dove way deeper into some of these numbers, but also seen what Courtland Sutton did. This is how things work. This is why people talk about market value. And the current market value right now for a 29-year-old entering his age 30 season that has good numbers, but not eye-poppingly great numbers, is currently $23 million per year, because that's what Courtland Sutton signed. All right, continue taking your calls. 301-230-0980. Let's go to Jeremy. Jeremy's in Baltimore. Jeremy, what's going on?
All right, I just have to raise the credibility of the fan base here in D.C. to respond to that last caller, because that was absolutely the dumbest statement I've ever heard. Of course, these guys are risking great bodily harm by playing in the NFL, but it's their choice to do so, right? So, you don't say, well, they should be paid $50 million a year because they might die on any play. I mean, it's just absurd. But here's the bottom line. I heard yesterday or the day before that Terry was asking for considerably more than DK's deal, which, to your point, makes absolutely no sense. And to your earlier point, the reason why the teams and franchises like Pittsburgh and Ravens and things have always been relevant for the past 15 years is because they don't do stupid things like grossly overpay, pay nice-to-have positional players. So their reach, and I could make this argument that Pittsburgh might have a better roster at this point that would set them up to make a deeper run versus Washington, right? And we have the far superior quarterback, but if you look at their defense and what they have signed, it almost makes more sense for Pittsburgh and Mike Tomlin to take a huge gamble on a DK deal and just see if they can make it work. But here's the bottom line. I love Terry. I'm 47. I've been a fan forever. I've been paying him anything over 30 is a total Dan Snyder move. It just ain't happening. And Terry's best option is to stay in DC, playing with Jesus at quarterback. That's going to make him exponentially better. We love Terry, but this is starting. And I try to not be emotional because I cheer for the jersey, right? Because players come and go, and Terry has no leverage now. His big argument at the commercial shoot at Eastern Motors was that he's healthy and available. Well, you might say that the team said that he has to have fake an injury so he's not losing $50,000 a day, but now he's not available, right? And we used to look at him as this great leader, and now Courtland Sutton is doing things above and beyond. Now, I'm not suggesting Terry should take, to your point, a team-friendly deal, but Terry ain't getting more than $28 million. And if he has to play for us, and all the leverage is with us because he has to show that he's healthy. He has to play really. This is his last chance to get a really, really big deal and guaranteeing money. Next year, he's going to be 31. What's the biggest thing that's hurting Terry is he has a terrible, terrible agent. Jeremy Chin is his agent's biggest player. He is being so mismanaged, it's wild. That Eastern Motors press conference was about 45 minutes too long. Terry advocating about why he deserves more money. Now he's holding out, but he's hurt and this and that. That leverage is with us and with the greatest quarterback we've had in a really long time. Terry is going to be extra motivated. If he doesn't sign a new deal, what's he going to do? He can't hold out the whole year and then try to sign a major deal as a 31-year-old. He's got to come and produce. So if this agent gets in line and figures it out and deals with Adam, who is absolutely cooking, he's going to sign Terry for $28 million. We're going to make a run.
Jeremy, this is a good call, man. I really appreciate it. I agree with a lot of what you said. Terry's not going to hold out for the entire year. He's not going to do that. That one, it just completely tanks his reputation. But two, there has been no good player that has held out for an entire year and still been good after holding out. Le'Veon Bell tried it with Pittsburgh, and then things went drastically sideways. So that's not going to happen. Let's go to Alex in Crofton. We'll take a few more here. Steve Wyche, NFL Network, is going to join us here shortly. Alex, go quick, but you're on the Kevin Sheehan Show.
Yeah, how you doing today?
I'm doing well.
First off, that one caller that said your worth is what your team tells you. That's stupid. I mean, at any job you compare to what other people are doing in your same profession, and he's overvaluing himself. He's thinking it's, like I said, the Dan Snyder era, And how much has he made so far in his career? Like 60 million, 65?
Roughly a little bit more than that, but close enough.
Even, I mean, if you look at the guaranteed, probably get 40, 50 million guaranteed. And it's getting to the point. I love Terry, but it's the point, like, really, dude, you're playing, you're playing a game. You're getting paid astronomical amounts of money. And I know it's, in reference to the other players, and you can't say that, but the average person is not going to, it just doesn't understand this. You know what I mean? It's like, just, you get 28 million, 29 million a year. I mean, if he had a bad year, are they going to say, let's renegotiate next year and make less? I mean, it just doesn't happen.
No, that's not going to happen.
It's generational worth. So
that's a great call. So he's earned $56 million. He's on the final year of that big contract. So this year would be another 19. And so that would take that number, drastically higher, obviously. All right. If you are on hold, we will come back to this in the 11 o'clock hour. But joining us next is going to be Steve Wyche from the NFL Network. He was out there at training camp as a part of NFL Network's training camp tour. So we will get his thoughts on what he saw from Washington when we get back. It is the Kevin Sheehan Show. Denton Day sitting in for Kevin here on the Team 980.
All right, here's what is happening on this Wednesday, July 30th. No camp updates for the Commanders today. They have a day off. They will have a walkthrough tomorrow. They're gearing up for joint practice with the New England Patriots next week. Surely a good time to be had by all. The first preseason game is Friday, August 8th. Camp injury bug is going around the league. Here are some updates. Patriots corner Christian Gonzalez left Patriots practice early with a limp. Jordan Schultz reports that he has a hamstring injury that could put his week 1 in jeopardy. Ravens tight end Isaiah Likely suffered a small foot fracture at the end of yesterday's practice that could sideline him for a few weeks. He may miss week 1 as well. And Browns quarterback hopeful Kenny Pickett has been sidelined with a hamstring, leaving Joe Flacco, Dylan Gabriel, and Shadur Sanders to fight out the reps among themselves. Ronald Acuna in baseball was removed from last night's game versus the Kansas City Royals and heads to the 10-day injured list with Achilles tightness. Last night, the Mystics defeated the Chicago Sky 103-86. Sonia Citron was hooping last night with 28 points on 10 of 15 shooting. She went 5 of 6 from three-point land. And last night, meanwhile, as well, the Nats, they fall to the Astros by a score of 7-4. They're looking to get one back early today. First pitch is at 2:10. Nats on deck at 1:40 with Charlie and Dave on 106.7 The Fan. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live from 10 to 1 and Craig Hoffman from 4 to 7. Don't forget to like the streams and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
It's the Kevin Sheehan Show. Denton Day sitting in for Kevin here on a Wednesday. Off day for the team. They're going to be back out on the practice field tomorrow. They were not in pads yesterday. I believe they will be in pads tomorrow. So we'll get a lot more information and we'll see a lot more physicality in tomorrow's practice. Excited about that. A guy that was at practice recently in Washington is Steve Wyche. He's good enough to join us now. Covers the NFL for NFL Network. Steve, first and foremost, man, appreciate you jumping on from us. You were at practice recently last week. What was your biggest takeaway from getting to see Washington up close and personal?
Well, they weren't in pads, but I mean, a couple things. One, you just look at the talent, the depth on their roster. Remember, now they're an older roster. They brought in a lot of older veterans. But last year, remember, they were signing guys just to kind of fill out a team. They were signing a lot of guys to one-year deals and things like that. Now they've got depth at, most levels. Of course, they needed a wide receiver with the Terry McLaurin situation going on. But, that's what's impressive, especially defensively. The way they've built up, their defensive front. They've added some players to the secondary that they really like. So, I mean, that's one of the things that stood out. And, of course, Jayden Daniels. Again, last year at this time, they were trying to figure out what he could do, what he couldn't do. And the people I talked to, from what I saw, I mean, he's just so comfortable. He understands it. He sees it. And a lot of that goes, you hear it over and over, the preparation. Like you saw him out there early before practice, is kind of going through the choreography of that day's practice script. So he's someone who really wants to make sure he's not surprised by anything. And so far, it looks like that's going quite well.
Steve, I've been out there a couple of days, and I don't know if you got this, but it feels to me like Jayden is just way more comfortable entering year number 2 versus rookie year last year.
Yeah, and again, that's the second year with an offensive coordinator, knowing what you do well, what the team does well, understanding what you might be able to do differently with a guy like Deebo Samuel in the lineup. Like right now, we're seeing him doing a lot of receiver routes and receiver concepts because, one, he's a wide receiver, but two, they've got to get comfortable. But once they start game planning and stuff, Deebo's going to be used. He's going to be carrying the ball some. You got Laramie Tunsil now at left tackle. He's super athletic. What does he do differently that, might be able to open some things up, compared to what they did before? So this is kind of a feeling out process. But that's with that comfort level, just with the game, with the personnel, with the speed. And again, with Cliff Kingsbury, the play caller, that's what you're seeing more of.
So you mentioned the defensive backfield. We will get to some Terry McLaurin stuff, I promise. I'm just burying the lead here. But you mentioned the defensive backfield. Marshawn Lattimore was a key piece added last year. Didn't look great. Part of that was because he, had some injuries. Now he's fully healthy. How did you think that he looked?
He looked good. I mean, they like him because he's a physical corner. I mean, he's not just a cover guy. He's somebody who's really good in run support, which is what they need out of their corners. More than anything, they need a guy who can take the ball away, and that's what Marshawn can do. I mean, when he doesn't give the receivers, doesn't allow for much separation, so he gets his hands on the ball. You have to understand, Joe Witt and Dan Quinn have been together for a while, and one thing their defenses always are among the top teams in the NFL in takeaways, whether, again, that's forced fumbles and interceptions. Let's not just think of interceptions. When they were at Dallas, I mean, for a 3-year run there, they led the NFL in takeaways, and they led the NFL in defensive scores. That's what they want. That's what Marshawn Lattimore can absolutely bring.
Talk with Steve Wyche, NFL Network, here on the Kevin Sheehan Show with Den Day sitting in for Kevin here on the team 980. Let's address the elephant in the room. Terry McLaurin he's holding in now, but he was holding out at the beginning of training camp. What is your take on Terry's situation here in Washington and this extension?
Yeah, this is going to be real interesting because, you've seen how the wide receiver market has gotten guys up above $30 million, 31, 32, some close to $40 million a year on the average per year. This could come down to structure, right? He may not get that average per year, but if they load the money up as to where he maybe gets a lot this year and a significant amount in the second year, that's maybe where they come to terms. But I think this is something where there's some chicken going on. It seems cooperative. He's there. It doesn't seem like there's any acrimony, which is good. As long as there's communication, that's fine. You just don't know if it's going to get to that frustrating point. But again, just from some of the things you hear, it's one of these things that'll get done. It's just a matter of when.
Cortland Sutton got paid about $23 million per year. Adam Schefter says that Terry's looking for potentially DK money, which would be $33 million per year. Where do you think that should land the contract should land financially?
Again, like I just said, I don't think it necessarily comes down to the APY, the average per year. It's more so the structure and the guaranteed money, probably in the first 2 years. I would think, you're thinking like $30 million. If you're going to go APY, that's kind of where things are. You understand Washington's perspective with Terry being 30 and playing for a lot of years. So it's not probably going to be a 5-year deal other than for cap purposes. But again, I think it's more so in the structure and the guaranteed money in the first few years that gets this done as opposed to necessarily the average per year.
How excited are you to watch this offense when Terry does start practicing and playing with Terry on one side, Debo on the other side, and then based off of what Jayden did last year?
I'm super excited. I mean, it's, again, and you add, and let's not just forget all the components. Again, you add a guy like Laramie Tunsil. This guy is like a freak athletically. I mean, you stand up next to him, you see he's like a big basketball player. He's just really active, great feet. So you get Terry in there. And again, the things you're going to end up doing with Debo is not just as a receiver, because you watch him in practice, you're like, yeah, he can still do this or that. He looks great physically. He's in shape. But I've covered Debo for a long time. I live in LA. I'm with the Niners a lot. He's most dangerous with the ball in his hands, right? Guys can't tackle him. You see how he's so thickly constructed. Guys bounce off him. That's where this offense is going to look really good. I'll tell you what, coming into preseason, though, a player I think folks need to keep their eye on, who I'm super eager to see, is this running back, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. He's got this incredible story. He transfers to Arizona. He's declared ineligible for whatever reason. Sticks around on the scout team all year, blows up the East-West Shrine game. I've got coaches calling me saying, hey, this guy, man, he didn't play last year, but he's like a real guy. Like, he's a real NFL explosive running back. They took him in the 7th round, but that's a player I think who could start inching his way into some rotation if he has a pretty solid preseason.
I'm glad you asked about him. We are starting to slowly fall, not slowly, actually, Steve. We are falling in love with Bill, as we call him. I think that running back trio with, Eckler in certain packages, but as more of the guy catching out of the backfield and then rotating B-Rob and Bill, I think that's a very, very dynamic trifecta.
Yeah, we'll see. Again, but again, you add an explosive player, and he's a thick guy too, but he's a hitter. He's that guy who can take that 5-yard run to a 15-yard run. You add a player like that, the diverse talents of that running back, it's going to give more options. Anytime you've got a quarterback who's mobile like Jayden, you hold a defender in place. And as we know, the NFL now is all math, how you can get a strong hold on numbers. And if you got an explosive player who can get just a crack, that can lead to a lot of big plays, which could be the difference in a ball game.
Do you know how close Cliff Kingsbury was to taking a head coaching job this offseason?
I don't. But, Cliff's smart. He, after what he went through in Arizona and kind of how he, went to USC and then attached himself here, he is going to take a job where he can succeed. So if he's, his next opportunity will be with a club where he knows he's probably going to be surrounded to succeed. He's highly regarded. He's very well thought of. So we'll see if they have some more success if he's back next year, because that'd be hard to keep a guy like that who's so highly regarded.
Steve Wyche, NFL Network, here with us on the Kevin Sheehan Show, with Dende sitting in for Kevin on the Team 980. What is the addition of Von Miller, albeit at the age of 36, add to this defense?
A couple things. I know Von well. I've covered him for years. As we know, he's somebody they're probably looking to spot at times, especially early in the season. I mean, Von's impact needs to come in December and January. That's when you want a closure. But you look at the personnel on this defensive line, and they did it strategically. Dorrance Armstrong was great, but you added Dietrich Wise, you added Javon Kinlaw. They were terrible on first down, right? Teams got into 2nd and 5 and 2nd and 4, and these situations where the defense was caught where they could, be passed on or run on. They want to be better on first down as to where they're getting teams in 2nd and 9, known pass situations where they could bring in a guy like Von Miller who can win. Like, Von still got the athleticism and everything. You don't want him to play every down, but one thing about Von, and I saw this when he was in LA, he's got to play some rundown. So he's kind of like a running back who gets better with, more of a sweat, so to speak. So they'll figure it out. I mean, Dan Quinn and Joe Witt are super creative with what they do with their guys up front. They'll figure out, they'll check his body, they'll measure how they work him. But if he stays healthy, I'd look more at the impact don't get too critical of him until December and January, because I think that's really where he's going to be felt.
So, Steve, you've obviously, as I mentioned, you've been covering the league for a long time. You've been around Ashburn before, right? How much better is the operation now than it has been in previous years?
It's kind of like that old saying, why are you going to trade in a steak for a hamburger? It's insane. I mean, in the prime example, and you've been out there, and a lot of viewers maybe or listeners maybe have or have not, but it used to be when you would walk out onto their practice facility, you'd see this big green AstroTurf field that was there like when Joe Gibbs was coaching. And coaches have wanted to tear it up, and it was laid in this crazy floodplain, so there was all kind of geographical things you would have to do it, so they didn't do it. Josh Harris and Dan Quinn come in like, get that up. Last summer when I was there this time, remember they were tearing it up. Now it's complete. They've got an additional practice field. Just everything is better, right? The attitude is better. The culture is better. And people hear this word culture all of the time. And it's a hard thing to establish. And Dan Quinn and Josh Harris and that whole regime have flipped it in a year. And, instead of being critical of everything and judging everybody, with that glass half empty approach, everything is a glass half full approach. And as any of us know, if we're made to feel valued or feel better, we're going to work harder. We're going to try harder. We're going to push through, bad emotions we may be having that day because you want to serve everybody in a certain way. And you feel it. Like, I'm around the league, and I know which teams have it and which teams don't. And the Commanders obviously have a positive culture, which was not the case for a long time.
Steve, I'll get you out of here on this. Do you think that Washington has done a good enough job, realizing that we're at the point in the year where there's probably not going to be a lot of drastic roster changes? Have they done a good enough job closing the gap with Philadelphia?
We'll see. I mean, Philadelphia, it's hard. I mean, the schedules get more difficult. And, the injuries, Commanders were pretty healthy last year. But I think talent-wise, again, building that roster depth, adding a rookie like Trey Amos, they needed to fortify their secondary. On paper, absolutely, it looks like they have.
Steve, greatly appreciate it. I know you're busy, so I appreciate you making some time for us. Enjoy the rest of your tour. We'll do this again soon.
Great. Thanks for having me.
That is Steve Wyche, NFL Network, good enough to jump on with us here on the Kevin Sheehan Show with Denton Day, sitting in for Kevin here on the Team 980. So some good stuff there from Steve. I love that he mentioned that green AstroTurf. Did you ever go, Max, to training camp as a youngster?
I never got a chance to make it out there. My dad's not a huge fan of crowds. That probably played into it. But at the same time, when the team sucked, why would you want to go out there?
Yeah, so it was like the when there was no crowd, it was like, what am I going to go watch Rex Grossman?
Yeah, right?
That's a pretty hard sell.
Sexy Rexy sling it.
Yeah, it's a hard sell for a youngster. But I do remember that green field. It was like almost ironically iconic because it was when I thought of it as a younger kid, right? Living 10 to 15 minutes away from the facility and seeing it on television all the time and figuring out that this is like the job I wanted to do. I like had this love for it because I was 12 and I didn't know any better. And then when I got older and you start to experience life a little bit more and you start to see other facilities and you're like, wait a second, why doesn't Baltimore have a green field like that? Oh, they're doing a hit from Dallas on ESPN. Why doesn't Dallas have a green field like that? The Patriots don't have a green. And you realize no one else has this ugly green AstroTurf. Thank God Josh Harris came in and ripped that thing off. Some of the modifications they have made on the interior, which we don't get to see as media members. There's not like a take the media to work day. We're allowed on the outside. We are not allowed to go inside their locker room and
all right, guys, tour time and
see like the hyper. They're never like, hey Denton, I heard you're training for a half marathon. You want to go jump in the hyperbaric chamber? They don't do that. They like me. They're nice to me over there. They're not that nice. They're not saying, hey, we'll go give you some ice on the massage table. How about that? That doesn't happen. But we have seen the modifications they have made, and it looks like a real operation now. Like it almost looks like a college. And if you know anything about college football, you should be attempting to mimic what they are doing with their locker rooms because they have to revamp those bad boys every year for recruiting purposes. So they did a really, really good job this offseason.
Rip the Vikings playbook right out of the – because they got the exact same thing.
They got the exact same thing. It's crazy what happens when you have a group of individuals that actually want to see the team succeed and to make money. You can do both. It's crazy. Not just make money like old Dan did, then use the private jet for his own little rendezvous. But that's neither here nor there. It's the Kevin Sheehan Show. Denton Day sitting in for Kevin here on the Team 980. Coming up, we will take more of your phone calls on Terry McLaurin, 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Plus, which analyst thinks that Jayden Daniels is a likely candidate for MVP? That comes your way next on the Kevin Sheehan Show. Big thanks to Steve Wyche jumping on with us here on the Kevin Sheehan Show. Denton Day sitting in for Kevin. If you missed that conversation, it'll be available on the Odyssey app. Or you can just rewind a little bit on YouTube. If you're not subscribed to the Team 980 YouTube channel, go ahead and do that. It is the Kevin Sheehan Show with Denton Day sitting in. You can tweet me at the Denton Day. We spent a lot of conversation, a lot of time on the Terry McLaurin contract. We will get back to that, but there are other players on the team and other players that I am excited about entering the year 2025. Like most of you, the player that I'm most excited about is the guy that wears number 5 on his chest, Jayden Daniels. He did a couple of interviews yesterday. There were a lot of national people at practice yesterday. There were some ESPN people. I know the Barstool guys.
The National Sports Podcast
were out there. They were doing Grit Week. Yeah.
Yes,
they were doing Grit Week out there. I saw that they had posted the Baltimore stuff today. So I guess Washington is going tomorrow. I thought they finished at Baltimore, though. I don't know.
No, so they do Monday, Wednesday, Friday show releases. They were at Ravens camp at the beginning of the week. Yesterday they were at Commanders camp, and now today they're in Philly at Eagles camp. So, and they mentioned on the podcast today that I was listening to that they talked to Von Miller as well. So that interview will probably be coming out next week.
And Von. So we are getting Jayden Daniels content from the Barstool guys.
I'm almost certain that they sat down because they sat down with Caleb last year. Why wouldn't they sit down with Jayden this year?
Right. So that will be fun to see, and we will discuss that when that does release. I thought they did Baltimore second because I'd seen something on Twitter about them taking batting practice at the Orioles ballpark.
That was like,
they're definitely not doing that here at Nats Park. So anyway, we will get to that. But there was an analyst on ESPN, a guy we're very familiar with, Louis Riddick, who was asked on the Get Up show. I think he was on Get Up.
It's usually Get Up.
He was on Get Up, and he was asked about Jayden Daniels in 2024 and potential or 2025. And listen to what he said about Jayden in 2025.
Jayden Daniels, the sophomore season. If I said he's going to be the MVP of the league this year, would you tell me that was ridiculous?
No, I would tell you that could very, very well happen. There's a good shot that may happen. This guy is unique. Now, we talk about unicorns all the time. This guy is a unicorn in terms of his football character, how mature he is. I watched him the other day having a media session. I'm sitting there going, has this guy played in the league 4 or 5 years? He's the unquestioned leader. He's one of the best leaders probably this football team has had in, 2 decades? I mean, he is without a doubt the head of the snake there, and I don't see him taking a step back at all. Don't mess it up with Terry McLaurin. Get his guy in there to a contract, not just in the building. Get him signed to a contract.
All right, so Louis Riddick wants Terry to get signed. All of us agree. And he thinks it's not crazy that Jayden could be MVP in 2025. So I have been very hesitant, Max, to really jump into the pool of Jayden for MVP. And there's a couple of different reasons for that. First and foremost,
a lot of good players in the league.
There's a lot of players in the league. And Lamar played out of his mind last year. He didn't win it. Josh Allen played out of his mind. He did win it, right? Jared Goff had a great season to start, and he was not even in the conversation at the end of it. This is a very, very long season, right? I'm cautious because at the beginning of last year, really this time last year, one of the favorites for MVP was C.J. Stroud. And C.J. Stroud's season in 2024 was not nearly as productive as it was in 2023. Now, did C.J. Stroud take a massive step back? I don't really think so. They still made it to the playoffs. They still won the division. They still got to the set. Like they got to literally every single place that they did the year before. His numbers, he just turned the ball over a little bit more.
So I got a little nugget because I just quickly Googled. I was like, what were C.J. Stroud's preseason MVP odds in 2024? It was plus 850. Do you want to know who is currently plus 850 to win MVP and will probably be the most bet to win MVP? Jayden Daniels.
Yep. The correlation between the two of them is as a gambler, you realize more than anything trends. You focus on numbers.
Absolutely.
You look at trends. The trending with Jayden and CJ Stroud is very difficult to miss. Now, certain sports books are going to price this differently. I happen to work for the BetMGM network, so I tend to use their sports book, and that is where Jayden is plus 850. If you can shop that around, maybe you can find it at 9-1. There might be some books that have that at +7 or just +8 on the money, right? Not +850. So shop around for deals if you are willing to jump into this market. But I'm hesitant because there are so many similarities. And when it comes to putting your money down, you just got to be a little cautious about that. Now, I'm also self-aware enough to realize I just think that Jayden was better than CJ Stroud was when you compare the 2 rookie years.
And another thing on all of that is, what did CJ Stroud do after his first season? He went on a little bit of like a media tour with Micah Parsons. They were rubbing
Big
elbows,
media.
doing the
my God,
podcast thing.
The media tour. They were in France, I think, together, which Jayden did go to France this offseason, so that's like not the greatest example, but they were doing fashion shows.
Exactly.
They were everywhere. They were doing other people's podcasts together. And so far as I know, outside of the Barstool thing,
which was at the Commander's facility,
which was them coming to him. And I can't imagine they were with him very long.
No, it'd probably be like 30 minutes, 45 minutes at most.
Honestly, I don't even think it was that. So
good chance.
What he did with Kevin Clark yesterday on ESPN, which we pulled some sound about Dan Quinn talking about Jayden. Jayden was on with Kevin Clark. I watched it yesterday. It was fine. It was not like a ton, but it was fine. That was a stand-up. You're not standing up for 30 minutes. That's like that's like a 5-minute max thing. And I think he was with Kevin Clark for 4.5 minutes. I would imagine that Jayden is with Barstool for longer than that, but it's not like, unless they had a set out there, it's not like they had a bunch of chairs there to sit there and talk for 30 minutes the way that they do at certain other establishments. So that could have also been like a 6 to 8 minute thing. If you're a rampant Barstool listener, which I'm not like a stoolie by any sense of the word. I do like Grit Week just because I think players give the Barstool guys a little bit more.
Yeah, they're a little bit more comfortable.
Traditional media. And that the Barstool guys do a really good job of opening the personality up, which Jayden just in general, like I thought Chick Hernandez had a really good interview, a really good sit down with him last week. Like Chick did a really good job, but Jayden just feels a little bit more comfortable. I mean, even the Sports Center thing where he's hyping up the crowd of like Terry, like when he's doing all that, there is a comfortability to it. So I think he'll probably do a little bit with the Barstool, but you're right. He's not doing this massive tour.
Yeah.
Like CJ, and to his credit, if you have the season that CJ did, you are entitled to go do all of the things, like embrace being an NFL football player. I'm not going to take anything away from a guy that decides to embrace being an NFL football player. And because from the looks of it, CJ Stroud kept the main thing. Again, like the issues that he had in 2024 were very much the offensive line was all over the place.
Oh, absolutely.
A little alarming because his left tackle now plays here, but that's, we're not going to get into that. That's not here nor there. That unit as a whole had exceeded its ceiling. Like it had hit it. We're done. We're not going further. We need to make some adjustments. Their whole coaching staff was a mess in there as well. Remember, Bobby Slowick was supposed to be Kid Wonder, and he was very much not. He had head coaching opportunities, decided to come back to Houston to be an OC again, and that didn't work. So, like, there were a lot of things outside of just CJ Stroud not playing as well statistically that went into his step back last year. I anticipate that some of those issues are not going to be here. There might be a few things that make their way here, like the offensive line has seemingly a little bit of work to do in the early portions of training camp, but I'm not going to watch one padded practice in July and make a declaration about how good or bad the offensive line is going to be in 2025. Training camp is training camp for a reason. It's about getting better. It is about establishing continuity with one another and a chemistry with one another. You're kind of supposed to look bad now. And I'd much prefer you look bad now than look bad when the season starts. So I feel pretty okay about the offensive line. I think the talent itself is pretty good. And once they decide who is going to be starting where, which I don't think they have done yet, which is another thing that is going to be important. What do you do with Connerly? Is he going to be your right tackle? Are you going to start Wiley at right tackle? Wiley is not the long-term right tackle, but I thought he was at the very least passable for a majority of the year last year. Connerly, of course, you're hoping is the guy that is going to be a stalwart at that position, at least while Laramie Tunsil is here, and then maybe Connerly switches over to like there's a bunch of stuff there, right? But once you get the actual, all right, here's who's going to be playing what position for the offensive line, you'll be a little bit better. So I do think Washington has set themselves up to be more successful than CJ Stroud was with Houston last year, meaning that Jayden Daniels could be more successful statistically than CJ Stroud was in year number 2. But then this is where the personal thing gets into it, Max. And here's the personal bit. I hate betting on my team. We have in the gambling world what is called a happiness hedge, which is where you will sometimes bet against your team. And I didn't do that a lot last year. In fact, I think I did it maybe once.
I think I did it more with the Caps than I did the Commanders.
Right.
Year.
You do that more with the Caps, more with the Nationals. I didn't do it a lot with Washington last year because I started winning a bunch. And I was like, I don't need the money that much. I just rather them win.
Right.
But you do a happiness hedge, or in this instance, you just don't bet on your favorite player to win MVP. I did that a bunch with Juan Soto when he was here, and you will know that Juan Soto never won an MVP.
Worked out my rookie of the year bet, though, baby.
Hey, there you go. See, you were ahead of the game with that. I didn't bet into one rookie of the year. So I'm a little cautious of betting Jayden to win MVP, especially knowing that the schedule is going to be more difficult. And for all intents and purposes, they are correct when Washington was not crazy smitten by the injury bug last year. Brian Robinson missed some time. Biadasz missed some time. It's not that there weren't injuries. There very much were. Noah Brown was not eligible for a majority of the second half of the season due to the internal organ situation going on there. So Jayden did lose out on a number of different guys. So to say that Washington didn't have any injuries would not be the case. There was just no injuries to the most important players in 2024, but the most important player outside of Jayden is currently not practicing right now because of the contract standoff between him and the team. And as we cycle back to the Terry thing, I thought it was interesting what Steve Wyche said about the contract, and it's the guarantees that he thinks are holding up. Now, this is not like a report. He was not reporting that. He said this is his gut feel. He says that I feel like it is the guarantees that are holding this up from being a completed deal. My entire argument yesterday was take care of your player with guarantees, not the AAV. The AAV is a pride thing with athletes. The guarantees are what you should really care about. Like when we see these big contract numbers and you say it's X amount of years for X amount of dollars, that dollar number is going to be sky high, but it's the guarantees that are really what you should be looking at, because once the guarantees run out, you do the holdout, I want a new contract thing all over again. So if it's the guarantees that are holding up this contract with Terry McLaurin, if he wants significantly more guaranteed than DK Metcalf, that would be something that I'm open to, because you can still hit that AAV at a lower rate with that guaranteed money, and you have set yourself up as a team to have a good amount of cap space now. Like right now, they have $21 million of open cap space that you could very much utilize a lot of that in a first-year guarantee for Terry. You're going to have a lot of guarantee or a contract or cap space up next year as well. And then after next year, that cap space is theoretically going to take a major hit, because that is when the Jayden contract is going to come about. So that is a thing of itself. But I think the guarantees are, if that is what's holding this up, that would lead me to believe, Max, that things are maybe a little bit closer than people have been telling us, because I don't feel like you can be that far off on the guarantees.
I would hope, but at the same time, when you look at the guarantee breakdown, like after CeeDee Lamb had 67 guaranteed, DK's got 60. So in theory, if that was the issue and he wanted quote unquote significantly more than DK Metcalf in guarantees, what would you probably? I feel like I would say smack dab in the middle at that, probably around 64.5, 65.
64.5. So if they take let's just say it's a 4-year at 28 per year, which is around, quick math here, I think it's around 107, something like that. Yeah. You 28 times 4, it's 112. So it's about 112.
We were close
on the totals, but then you guarantee half of that, or a little over than half of that, which would give you to that number at $63.5, $64 million. You sign that immediately. Yep. If you're Terry, you put pen to pad immediately. You tell your agent, fly your ass back here, drive your ass back here. I don't know where his agent lives.
Send
So
me
I
the
don't know.
DocuSign.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what his mode of transportation is, but get your ass back here if you're not here, and then we're gonna go in and we're gonna sign this thing together. So I'm optimistic that we are going to see that Terry contract very, very soon. We will take your phone calls, not on Terry. We've taken enough of those. I want your calls on Jayden. Are you comfortable wagering that Jayden is going to win MVP in 2025? Or are you, like me, a little more cautious and saying, I'm not going to bet that my quarterback is going to win MVP? I'm not going to do it. I'm not superstitious. I'm a little stitious. I'm pulling my Michael Scott card. I'm not superstitious. I'm a little stitious. I don't like to bet my own players to win MVP. Where do you stand on the Jayden Daniels winning MVP in 2025? Your phone calls at 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. You can tweet me as well at the Denton Day. It's the Kevin Sheehan Show. Denton Day sitting in for Kevin here on the Team 980. It's the Kevin Sheehan Show. Denton Day sitting in for Kevin here on the Team 980. You can tweet me at the Denton Day. Jump in on the phones, 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. We'll do Denton's Daily News coming up in about 15 minutes here. We will also have an update on something that nearly killed Anthony Haney yesterday. That's coming your way. Yeah, so we will discuss that. We might have to call Anthony.
Wellness check, I agree.
Yeah, just to see. I think he might be around. I'll text him. So that's coming up in about 15 minutes. Jordan Dajani is going to join us at high noon. Grant Paulsen at 12:30. We'll talk with Grant about training camp, but then also Major League Baseball's trade deadline is coming up. Is there any sort of real legs to the potential of Mackenzie Gore being traded by the Nationals? So that
Travis Sikora's arm just exploded. So it's been a great week for the Nats.
Great week. So we will talk with Grant about that coming up here. Max, I sent you a piece of audio. There's two things that I would like to play, but sure. I'm going to start with the one that's way more positive. I sent you a piece of audio regarding Deebo Samuel.
I have this audio.
You have this audio. Perfect. So Deebo has been a guy that we have not spent a lot of time talking about because the majority of the wide receiver conversation has been dominated by Terry and Terry's contract. And there is another piece of audio that we will play about that. But I want to start with Deebo here because Deebo is getting a lot of reps as the number one guy right now because no Terry, and they're moving him around like he is still very much in the learning process of this offense. You know, he worked out with the team in mini camps and OTAs, but it's a new offense. Terminology, I don't know how much is similar versus the difference between what Kyle Shanahan was doing in San Francisco and what Cliff is doing now. I would imagine terminology is different, but concepts might be very similar. He's been going up a lot against Mikey Sanders still, and Mikey is having a hell of a start to camp, albeit one day of pads, but that dude is an absolute machine. Dan Quinn has spoke very highly about Mikey. Mikey had media availability earlier this week. Listen to what he said about Deebo Samuel and getting to go up against Deebo in practice.
You and Deebo have had your fair share of battles through the first week at camp. What have you kind of seen from him, and what do you think he'll bring to the offense this year?
Deebo is Deebo, you know what I mean? Like we know him for the plays that he makes on Sundays, the things that he's been doing his whole career. For me, you know, I've appreciated having him on the opposite side of me because I just know every single rep is going to be a rep to get get him better, get me better. And you know, I feel like that's you know, that's what I needed, was to have somebody like him who's going to push me and, you know, help me get better. We know we've done extra things after practice, whether it's walk through tempo, jog tempo, it doesn't matter. Like just every single day, like we both have the mindset of, you know, we're gonna battle, we're gonna compete. You're gonna get better, I'm gonna get better. And what I think, you know, he adds to the offense is just another weapon. You know, he could take over a game. He could, you know, he's done it. So I'm super excited to see, you know, him perform this year and just, you know, get back to just playing 11 football the way he does. And I think, you know, whatever's happened in the past is the past. Him being here now, you know, you could just feel the good energy. You could see the positivity in him, and he's just excited to be here and just ready to play and just, you know, help this team win.
That's Mikey Sanders still from the podium talking about Deebo Samuel. A lot of good stuff there. There was a bit of a longer clip, but there's a lot to unpack in that clip. First and foremost, speaking on what Deebo is bringing to the offense, I'm incredibly excited about what Deebo is going to be as a member of this team. You know, I think when the trade was made, there were a lot of us that looked at it and said, well, Deebo can play in the backfield. He can do a bunch of different things, and he's going to be utilized as this Weapon X kind of player. I know Weapon X traditionally was a Brian Dawkins nickname, but I feel like he's been retired long enough to where if we wanted to graduate that to Deebo, that could be something we could do. I'm not going to ask permission from Philadelphia. They can kick rocks. But if he's going to be used as like this Weapon X thing, also Weapon X is Wolverine, and I love Wolverine. If he's going to be used in this Weapon X thing, like what does that bring to the offense? And I do think there is merit to that. But in the beginning stages of training camp, without Terry there, Deebo is also showcasing that, yes, I can do a bunch of the crazy things in the backfield that this team has not had a guy to do from this position before. But it's also a little bit of a reminder that, hey, I'm really good at playing outside as well. Like I can win matchups one-on-one. I can stretch the field with verticality and athleticism. Yeah, I'm really good at screenplays, but hit me on a deep crosser. I'm really good in that space. I can win on a go ball off the line of scrimmage and create separation. The route tree that Debo has as a guy that would play your wide receiver 2 to Terry's wide receiver 1, or if you just want to be a little bit more even playing field, wide receiver 1B to Terry's 1A. Debo brings a whole nother element in terms of the route combinations because he's a better route runner than anyone they had playing wide receiver 2 last year. His bag is a little bit deeper when it comes to route running and the ways that he can open up the field and find space in the field. There are a bunch of good to decent wide receivers on this roster. Jalen Lane has showed some flashes. Luke McCaffrey has had some really good practices, and he had some really good moments last year. There are good wide receivers on here, but they do not have a lot of NFL experience in some of the nuanced things, like finding holes in the defense, when to sit down versus when to continue a route, when to break in, and all these different things. Like, it's very little things that make very big differences, and Debo very much has those already. So him adding those to this offense is something that you should be incredibly excited about. And then what Mikey said about them working together during practice, but also outside of practice. We played a clip yesterday where Dan Quinn was talking about the unseen work that Jayden Daniels is doing. And he had given an example of Jayden walking off of the practice field early in the morning as the sun is rising, which, if you pay attention to sunrise here, that's around 5:45, 5:50-ish, so to speak, at various different points. It's a little earlier, closer to DC, a little later in Ashburn because it's a little bit more far west. But it's around the 5:45 range. Dan Quinn's doing cardio and he sees Jayden coming off of the field. That's a great example of unseen work. But there are other guys doing this, right? And Jayden is become a leader of the franchise. I don't know if he is a leader in terms of your rah-rah speech guy, but I don't think that he needs to be. Like, when you think of John Allen in previous years, John Allen, he was ready for a pregame speech. I'm ready for it. I got my speech lined up. I'm going to get everybody hyped. We're going to go out there and play ball. I don't know that Jayden is that, but he very much is a lead by example. And when you see a guy that is hungry, like Jayden is, and constantly putting in extra work, in turn, it is going to have everybody want to match that energy and put in extra work. So when Mikey says that he and Debo are working off of the field after practice, and some of that might be in the later afternoon walkthroughs before everybody goes home, where most of the media have gone home at that point because we're not allowed to stay out there for a majority of that sort of stuff. Putting in that sort of extra work to work on technique and to work on, hey, I'm reading a situation this way. How would you attack it? And then work together with that. We know that Mikey is a competitor. He was my favorite defensive player to watch last year because it didn't matter who he lined up against. He wasn't going to win every single rep, and there were some losses the same way that there were some wins on reps, but he was not afraid of anybody. We saw that in that first Thursday night game against Philadelphia, which is when he started to transition from the slot to the outside and say, like, all right, this is the guy. Like, we're done with the St. Juice experience. We are done with the Michael Davis experience. This Thursday night game was a showcase. Mikey can play outside, and we knew that because he went up against A.J. Brown, who had about a 5 to 6 inch height difference over Mikey Sanders still, and it didn't really matter. Mikey was not afraid of him in any way, shape, or form. And then when he matched up against Devontae Smith, it didn't matter. He was not afraid of Devontae Smith in any way, shape, or form. So we know he's a competitor. Getting to work with a guy like Debo with some of these intricacy things, that is what really, really excites me, and everybody getting in on it. So Mikey and Debo are working. We have heard from guys that are out at camp. Von Miller is working with guys that are young on the offensive line. Javon Kinlaw is working. Johnny Newton is working. Everybody is working with one another. That has not always been the case here. And that really speaks to the great culture that Washington is building. It's very easy, and I am a victim of this. Obviously, look, I got 3 hours to kill. We're going to talk the Terry stuff. And usually the Terry stuff is going to be the opening subject. That's how the sausage is made here. But there are other guys and other things going on this roster outside of the Terry thing, and to see everybody in the culture being cultivated the way that it was last year, and then a continuation from last year to this year, to where everyone realizes like there's not fights happening. Maybe there will be at some point a scuffle or so, but this is not an organization where they're fighting every single time. We've already seen fights in Pittsburgh. They went and got Jalen Ramsey. Jalen Ramsey and DK already having some issues as competitors in camp. That's not how things are operating here. They're realizing, like, when you realize training camp is something that you are supposed to utilize to just work and get better, I feel like it makes it a lot more fun for the players there, and it's a lot less grueling, and you understand that you're working towards a common goal. That has never been the case here for a long, long time. A long, long time. I don't know what training camp was looking like in the Gibbs era in the 90s, the 80s and 90s. If someone was out there working a training camp, let me know. I don't know what those looked like. I know what they look like in the Ron era. I heard what they look like in some other eras, the Jay era, the Shanahan era, the Zorn, and it's different. It's just a completely different, and it's 180 from what it has been, and that's how you get better. So Mikey complimenting Debo, and that was one of the first times that Mikey, I think it is the first and only time that Mikey had done any sort of podium. So generally how that works, we get the coaches a lot, and then they kind of cycle in players. And Mikey has graduated to a podium player, which is great because he is incredibly insightful. And like that nugget is a good example of it. There is one more thing that I want to play because, as I mentioned, the Terry thing is the biggest storyline going on with this franchise right now. Dan Quinn was on the Junkies this morning, and I think this was EB. EB asked Dan Quinn about Terry McLaurin and when we are going to see Terry. He's currently on the PUP list dealing with an ankle injury. They asked Dan Quinn when we are going to see Terry on the practice field, and here was Dan Quinn's response.
Yeah, right, Jason. It's when you go on to PUP, there's an element, from the first part where, there's some rehab that goes. And so for Terry specifically, an ankle, it's not that uncommon where towards the end of a season, you have that and you're dealing with a little bit in the off season. I don't have a specific timetable on it. We're thankful that he's here and that the work's getting done. But he and Sam Cosme, they do rehab and some days field work, some days, rehab, strengthening work. And then the afternoons meetings, and they're able to, watch the walkthroughs in the evening, although they can't go through them yet. So we'll just take it, step by step with he or any player really in this spot. Like, we're not going to miss anything, man, and take the next step. But I don't have a timeline to say it's, 3 days or, 5 days into that space. We're just going to make sure like he can absolutely, fully be Terry and let it rip. And then we'll begin the process. And then it goes then it's individual work and then some team reps. So it's kind of like a build up to get yourself ready. At the start of training camp, that's what we did with the team. Like, we ramp up, shorter practice, a little bit longer. So when a player's coming off PUP, you really need to do the same with them because they missed that ramp up. So once that part happens, Jason will do the same thing, but I don't have a timeline of when that is yet. But that's where we're at.
I got a timeline. When pen hits paper, all of a sudden, those individual drills will be getting done.
I love this whole charade. Oh, he's on PUP. He's got to do rehab with Sam Cosme.
He's working.
They're trying to get back.
He's working hard. He gonna be up there when he gets paid. And they will ease him in. Like, that part I do agree with. They are going to ease him in to practice when he gets that contract extension or when he decides that enough is enough, which there is going to be a line in the sand at some point. I don't know when that point is, but there is going to be a line in the sand. I'm hoping that an extension is done by the first preseason game, which is next Friday. That gives us still about 9 days to get it done. I'm hoping an extension is done by next Friday. I don't know if that's going to be the case, but that is my hope. Eventually, there is going to be a line in the sand because Terry's not going to sit out of everything. You hope that line in the sand is sooner rather than later, but he's likely not going to be out there until a decision is made. Either we have gotten the contract or we are just going to play this thing out and see what happens. But you are going to ease him in there. It would be idiotic for him to just start immediately as a full participant in practice. They're not going to do that. He didn't do the OTAs. He hasn't been here for a ton. They're not going to just throw him back into the deep end and say, "Hey, yep, go for it. You're signed. You're good. Go."
Training wheels are off.
Training wheels are off. Go run full speed. That would be idiotic. So I think they will ease him in, but he is very much not there because that contract has not been signed, and they realize that. This is not the first rodeo of anybody in the front office. This is not the first rodeo of anybody in the coaching staff. And right now, everybody is handling this beautifully. They're saying all the things they need to say without being petty and obnoxious in front of microphones. They haven't called him Troy yet, the way that Bruce Allen was royally mispronouncing the name of his quarterback, Kurt Cousins, instead of Kirk. They're not mispronouncing his name. They're not being idiots. They're not taking petty shots at him. They're saying everything they need to. And when business gets done, everyone will hug it out, and we'll go out there and we will have a grand old time in 2025. Coming up, Jordan Dajani going to join us in 20 minutes. Denton's Daily News on the way next. It's the Kevin Sheehan Show with Denton Day sitting in for Kevin on the Team 980.
The culture is actually damn good.
All right, here's what's happening on Wednesday, July 30th. No camp updates for the Commanders today. They have the day off. They'll have a walkthrough tomorrow, gearing up for joint practices with the New England Patriots next week. Surely, good time to be had by all. First preseason game is Friday, August 8th. Camp injury bug is going around the league. Here are some updates. Patriots corner Christian Gonzalez left practice early with a limp. Jordan Schultz reports that he has a hamstring injury that could put his week 1 in jeopardy. Ravens tight end Isaiah Likely suffered a small foot fracture yesterday that could sideline him for a few weeks. He may miss week 1 as well. Browns quarterback hopeful Kenny Pickett has been sidelined with a hamstring injury, leaving Joe Flacco, Dylan Gabriel, and Shadur Sanders to fight out the reps among themselves. To MLB, Ronald Acuna was removed from last night's game for the Kansas City Royals. He'll head to the 10-day injured list with Achilles tightness. The Mystics last night, they defeated the Chicago Sky 103-86. Sonia Citron was hooping with 28 points on 10 of 15 shooting. She went 5 of 6 from three-point land. Meanwhile, the Nats, they fall to the Astros by a score of 7-4 last night. They're looking to get one back early today. First pitch is at 2:10. Nats on deck with Charlie and Dave at 1:40 on 106.7 The Fan. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live from 10 to 1 and Craig Hoffman from 4 to 7. Don't forget to like the streams and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
Kevin Sheehan Show. Denton Day sitting in for Kevin here on the Team 980 at the Denton Day on Twitter. Jordan Dajani going to join us at noon here. Before we get to Jordan, it's been a long time. Let's hit some Denton's Daily News. All right, it feels weird throwing to myself, but I'm going to do it anyway, Max. But I'm going to call on you, and I'm going to call on video producer Brian.
Oh, God.
How
What could
hot
this
is it
be
in that
about?
room?
Brian, what does it say over there?
It says 84 degrees.
So we open the door.
84. Hold on. Let's just. 84 degrees.
Correct. 84.
As in an 8 and a 4.
Correct.
Yes.
Inside.
Like Randy Moss.
In the summer.
Yep.
Okay. Continue. Just wanted to make sure everybody
So-
was aware of how hot it was in that studio.
So I'll tell the full story. We got in here yesterday. You may have heard if you listened to the show, it was already blistering hot.
Yes.
So they tried to reset the AC. The compressor is dead. So it would run for about 4 minutes and then it would make a weird noise and shut off.
Not great.
Not great. We fast forward to today. Everybody was not in a great mood yesterday just because we were
Stunning.
in heat.
I mean, we are literally sweltering inside.
We received reports from one producer, Anthony Haney, who said he almost passed out yesterday.
Yeah, so what happened
Due to the
was we have a producer group chat. I am in it for the vibes because I'm technically not a producer anymore, but I passed the vibe chat.
We like you. We haven't kicked you out yet.
We haven't kicked me out. We've kicked other people out, but we've not kicked me out yet.
That's neither here nor there.
So I texted in the group at 6 o'clock last night because I was like, all right, 6 o'clock. It's been a number of hours. Surely progress
Certainly.
has been made because we were told at noon yesterday the issue was fixed and then nothing was fixed. So I texted that group chat at about 6 p.m. and I said, hey, how's it feel in the Team 980 studio? Is the AC still broken? To which producers from 1067 across the hall jumped in on the fun, but from an empathetic standpoint, which is very rare because it's us versus them.
Because you know it's bad if they're like, man, I do kind of feel bad for you.
Because they got, trust me, if the AC was down in the 1067 studios, they'd be down for 15 minutes and they'd have everything up and running again. But in 980, not the case. I mean, there was a beeping noise. I don't know if you knew this, Max. I don't know if you were working here at the time. Brian, you definitely weren't because you would have worked outside the studio. There was a beeping noise for 2 entire weeks in the studio that was not fixed for 2 weeks. And I was told that the beeping was something, it was a piece of equipment that was too important to the setup to turn everything off, but not important enough to where they had an extra on hand. It took 2 weeks. You're like, how long was it beeping? Every 3 seconds.
So we also have the Q computer that it generates a weird tone. I'm sure you know
I'm
from sitting
aware.
here.
Yes.
Yes. So every time Drab walks in here, he's like, do you want me to try and stop that? I was like, dude, at this point, it's been gone on for so long. It's white noise. The beeping every 3 seconds, much worse fate.
Much
what I
worse.
currently sit
It
through.
was literally, I have a heart rate monitor on my watch.
Yeah.
It would raise my heart rate and it would make me insufferably angry. I would literally have to take laps after the show just to like cool down before I saw humanity again. But anyway, so I texted.
Speaking of laps.
Speaking of laps, so I texted that group chat and Anthony said, I have literally almost fainted because it was, I think for him, it got up to like 85 degrees in there.
It's 84.
So they brought in a unit to your room. Now we are separated by a pane of glass and a door
and a bunch of
drywall, but we use the same AC operator. So the temperature in that studio that the production guys are sitting in is the same temperature as the one that I am sitting in. On the other side of the drywall that Max is sitting on is the office for my boss at BetMGM, Andrew. Andrew came in and told me, I walked out of the studio to go refill my water.
He walked in here and brought it up to me as well, actually.
It's freezing in his office. He's like, I need to put a sweater on. And I'm like, I hate you.
Yep. He said the same thing to me.
So if anybody knows or has the come up on how to fix an AC unit for a building, please let us know. I don't know how to work a compressor. I don't know what that, like a compressor could be a thing. I don't know if that's a real thing or not.
It is. No,
like, I have no idea. I am royally dumb with this. So I'm just here to talk sports, not to fix AC units.
I know one guy who can fix ACs, and I pay him in beer, and he's semi-retired. So I don't know how much help he'll be, but I could put in a call.
That at a certain point there needs to be a line in the sand, because I've been a team player. I could be like Chris Russell did the show from home yesterday.
Coward.
I could very easily be doing that, but I'm down with the fellas.
Solidarity.
You know, we are in this together, because with the morning show that I work on, that I left the Kevin Sheehan show for to work on, was remote again today. So I came from my home, traffic wasn't terrible, thankfully, drove about 20, 25 minutes to come into an 84-degree studio. You guys have now an AC unit in there that is supposed, like a mobile AC unit in there that is supposed to be helping.
Supposed to be.
It is not. I quite literally, this is going to be very TMI. Mom, I apologize. I literally have a portable fan underneath my balls right now in the studio. It is like just perfect enough to fit under the chair that I'm sitting in, and it's just blowing up on me as we sit here. Pause, but not really. We're going to great lengths. I might have a personal handheld fan in here. The problem with a handheld fan is it makes a very loud noise.
It does. It's a loud whirring.
And I have a microphone, so I can't hold the fan to my face with a microphone. I'm trying to lose some weight because I'm running a marathon, or a half marathon, in 7 weeks, I think. 8 weeks.
You should know this.
I have it on my phone. I'm fine.
Right,
the
good.
date is September 13th. It's the DC half marathon. I got peer pressured into it by my wife and her friends, and then my wife told me she's going to be out of the country, so she's not even going to be there to support me. I thought I was going to get saved by the Commanders. They play on Thursday that week, so I was like, damn it, I got to do this thing. So I'm like trying to slim down a little bit, carry a little bit of less weight for the actual run. I did not want to sit in a sauna for 3 hours. And you're like, well, 84 degrees isn't a sauna, Denton. After hour number 1, it is. For 15 minutes, it's not. After hour number 1, it is. Are we done on that?
Well,
anyone else gonna want to get a little bit off their chest on that?
I don't know. We may have leaked too many details. I'm getting texts.
I don't care about it.
We're suffering for the content.
Yeah, I don't care what kind of details we're leaking. Fix the AC unit so I ain't leaking from my pores here. Thank you very much. Jordan Dajani going to join us at noon. I wanted to get to this yesterday, Max, and I did not get a chance to because we had great phone calls yesterday. A lot of Terry conversations.
It's been a packed week.
I'm a massive college football fan. I work in college football. I tend to think I'm a genius of college football. That's self-proclaimed, though no one else has called me that. I'm not a huge Reddit guy, but I do dabble every now and then. I like Reddit when people pull the Reddit stuff for me and I can find it on social media. And I found something 2 days ago. I wanted to do this yesterday, didn't get a chance to, so I'm instead going to do it today. This comes from TKing701 on a Reddit college football thread. It says, this is a story, right? So I need everybody to lock in for this story.
Little Wednesday reading. A
little Wednesday reading at my personal pulpit. This is from TKing701. It says, congrats on your 5-star recruits and $100 million facilities, SEC fans. Meanwhile, the MAC is out here playing real football in front of 14 people and a raccoon on a Tuesday night during a blizzard. You ever seen a punter throw a touchdown to a long snapper while the scoreboard's on fire? I don't think so. While y'all are busy arguing over which frat-funded dynasty is slightly less fraudulent, Toledo's cooking up a triple reverse flea flicker in a game that ends 43-42 after 6 missed PATs and a goalpost gets stolen. That's not football. That's maction. You wouldn't survive 1 quarter in Ypsilanti. Oh, my God.
Incredible.
I love this
Incredible
so much.
YouTube comment.
Oh, is this a YouTube comment? I don't know.
It's a YouTube comment pulled from the app. But yes, it makes me so happy that you read this on air.
My old ass thought this was Reddit. I don't know anything about anything. I'm literally 60 years old on the internet. But this is hilarious to me. I love college football. I kind of tend to lean SEC over most things. But if you ain't a fan of Maction, buddy, you ain't living. There is nothing better than popping on a Maction game where you don't know where the game's being played. You don't know who is quarterback in what team. You don't even know the colors of what team is playing what team, but you got money on that damn thing. And you got money on a 4.5 line, and it's a final possession, and everything is on the line with that. Maction is literally, it is junky kind of material for college football fans, especially when you get to the late stages of the calendar year where these games are being played in areas that get snow in like November. We ain't get snow in November. I'm cool with that. I don't want snow in November. I don't want snow at all.
But a snow game on a random Tuesday night in the middle of November?
In Ohio, where I am
Hell
not, sign
yes.
me up for that. In Ypsilanti, whatever it's called, sign me up for that. Give me all of it's like college football on drugs. They're not playing for a national championship. These dudes ain't barely playing for NIL. You think the Ohio NIL budget is a lot? Ohio State, yeah. Ohio Wildcats or Bobcats, whatever the hell they're called in like Akron, not as much.
$50,000 budget.
Like you're getting a crisp 20 after a great play. When I played flag football, this is back in the day, I had a coach that said he was going to pay us $1. I was like 9. Probably 12. He's going to pay us $1 for every interception and $2 for every touchdown. At 12, that's a lot of money. In a matching game, you're getting a crisp 20 for great plays. This was just hilarious to me. I couldn't get enough of that.
I'm so ready for football sicko time. And it starts tomorrow.
It does. You know who's starting that game for the Chargers?
I do.
Trey Lance.
Woo!
Trey Lance game.
Omari Hampton's gonna get some play. Trey Harris gonna get some play. I'm loading up.
If you're a smart gambler, you do gamble on Hall of Fame games. What is the line for that?
I want to say 3.5 or 4.5.
I'm on the thing here. I'm pulling this up now. I want to see what the line is. It's the Chargers and the Lions, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, Chargers Lions. It's a 1.5 point spread in favor of the Lions with a total of 32.5. I am slamming the under in this.
You have to, right?
I need Trey Lance to throw like 4 picks.
It ends at 17-14 is how we're going to end this.
A 17-14 game in which Trey Lance had 3 turnovers, and you might get a little bit of either Easton Stick or Taylor Hine. I don't know if Easton Stick is even on the Chargers anymore. I just know that he was, and that's Easton Stick is a hilarious name.
Trey Lance, Easton Stick, Taylor Heineke.
And Taylor Heineke.
What a trio.
Taking on whoever the Lions have at quarterback outside of Jared Goff. It's not
Teddy Bridgewater anymore.
He is not Teddy Bridgewater. He is coaching.
The kid from Tennessee, Hendon Hooker.
They got a little bit of Hendon Hooker. And are you ready for this?
Uh-oh.
Can I get a little bit of love for Washington? I think he was just a football teamer. For Washington football team legend Kyle Allen.
Hey!
Who is still up and kicking with the Detroit Lions.
Good for him.
I'm slamming the under on that before it gets down too deep. Jordan Dajani, CBS Sports, covers the NFL. He joins us next. It's the Kevin Sheehan Show. Denton Day sitting in for Kevin on the Team 980. Is the Kevin Sheehan Show. Denton Day sitting in for Kevin here on the Team 980. You can tweet me at the Denton Day. We'll talk Commanders training camp and Nationals trade deadline in 30 minutes with Grant Paulsen. But we're talking all things NFL with my guy, Jordan Dajani, CBS Sports. He's good enough to jump on with us now. Jordan, my friend, it's been a minute. How are you? How's your summer? Are you traveling? What's up?
I've been traveling everywhere, Den, but it's great to be on the phone with you talking some ball. I assume that you brought me on the show to talk about some preseason NFL gambling because I'm excited about Chargers-Lions, which will take place tomorrow. Let me tell you, I'm trying to make a couple bucks off my old friend Hendon Hooker, okay, the University of Tennessee prospect, the Virginia Tech transfer. I think that he's going to get some significant reps tomorrow night against the Los Angeles Chargers, who, by the way, went 1-2 in the preseason last year, even though Jim Harbaugh did a great job turning that franchise around. I'm looking at the Lions at -135 and the under 32.5.
I'm glad we are on the same page with the under because I'm hammering the under. I think we're going to get a big turnover game from Trey Lance.
Absolutely. I'm totally in agreement there.
All right, so as we will get to some actual like gambling stuff because we're both degens here, but I want to get your perspective from a national viewpoint. The Terry McLaurin contract debacle is going on a lot bit longer than most of us had anticipated. How do you view the situation between Terry and Washington right now?
Well, I will say from a national perspective, it's kind of surprising that we've gotten to this point. I mean, Adam Peters has been general managing in a way that's been favorable among the fan base over the last calendar year. And, it's not a conversation of if you should pay Terry McLaurin, it's what that number is going to be. So I never foresaw this reaching a hold out that turned into a hold in for training camp for Washington's number one wide receiver. But, one thing I've been saying that has kind of led us to where we're at right now is that we've seen some other wide receiver deals come down, and that's kind of affected Terry McLaurin's market, in my opinion. You saw DK Metcalf get traded from Seattle to Pittsburgh, and he signed an extension that's around $33 million per year. You saw Garrett Wilson, who, like McLaurin, is an Ohio State Buckeye, get $32.5 with his extension as well. So, in my opinion, if you offered Terry McLaurin around $31.5 at the beginning of the offseason, that might have been a contract he accepted. But if you came with that extension offer right now, I don't think it's something that he would. He's probably looking for something like $33 million a year, which would put him at, I think, number 4 highest paid wide receiver. And we all understand Terry McLaurin is one of the most underrated players in the National Football League, but I think it's a legitimate question if he's worth top 4 money. But the bottom line is that Washington had this magical campaign in 2024 that, of course, was headlined by Jayden Daniels, Offensive Rookie of the Year. But none of that would have been possible without Terry McLaurin, who caught a franchise record amount of touchdowns in that magical campaign.
So do you think what number would you pay him? Because 34 ain't happening, right? He's not going to be a top 4 wide receiver in terms of payment. Like that I think we're way past that point because if he was offered that, he would be signing it immediately. What would you be comfortable paying him?
Yeah, there's things you can do with the contract in terms of guaranteed money, which maybe Washington goes that route, paying some good money up front to kind of get a deal closed. But if we're talking about the almighty AAV, which is what we talk about when we're describing contracts, at the same time, I don't think it's an accurate descriptor when it comes to everything a deal entails. But I am around somewhere that 32 mark. Again, we heard that report from Adam Schefter. I'm sure you guys talked about it yesterday, saying that McLaurin is looking for something significantly more than DK Metcalf. I don't think that was a report. I think that was more his opinion. It's hard to imagine something like that is true. But I feel like the meeting point for the two sides, Adam Peters and McLaurin's camp, is going to be somewhere around 32.
Jordan Dajani, CBS Sports, with us here on the Team 980. Kevin Sheehan Show. Den Day sitting in for Kevin. When that contract is signed, whenever that is, and Terry is on the practice field getting ready for the season, how excited are you to see this offense with the additions of Deebo Samuel and Laramie Tunsil?
I am really excited. I mean, keeping Jayden Daniels upright is the key to success and actually getting to the Super Bowl, in my opinion. And Laramie Tunsil is something that absolutely aids in that goal. When it comes to Deebo Samuel, I don't want to be negative Nancy, but I'm someone who's probably a little low on that addition compared to everyone in the DMV. Deebo Samuel was a very niche player who at one point looked like one of the best weapons in the NFL under the guidance of Kyle Shanahan. So with Cliff Kingsbury, what is his role going to look like? That's what I'm super interested to see. And can he be consistent and stay healthy as well? So I don't know if I can claim that Deebo Samuel is going to be an X factor for this Washington offense. If I'm wrong and he is, then the Commanders can absolutely reach the NFC Championship game once again if Jayden Daniels can remain healthy. But that's a big question in my opinion.
What is a fair expectation for a 36-year-old Von Miller?
To make big plays when they matter most. How about that? Not to be a 3-down defensive end, but to be someone who can get that crucial 3rd down stop when you're facing the Philadelphia Eagles at home, to make that crunch time sack in the wild card round that advances Washington to the next round, something along those lines. Because, we've talked about that one of Washington's biggest needs entering this offseason was upgrading the pass rush. And what Adam Peters did was very underwhelming until we got the news that Von Miller was going to go ring chasing with the Washington Commanders, which I think is a great addition. But again, it's hard to view this guy as a 3-down pass rusher. I still think he's got some juice. I still think he can bring some energy to a game and really shake things up on 3rd down. And I think that's what the general expectation is to remain healthy. And when Washington gets to the postseason, that's when he can step up his game and really make big plays.
Do you think there's going to be any sort of team regression this year? They had a great year last year with an easier schedule, tougher schedule this year. Do you think there's going to be any sort of regression in the win column?
Yeah, I mean, that's such a tough question because I feel like logically you have to say yes. Like we've seen this time and time again. Look at what happened with the Houston Texans last year. And I'm kind of scared that Washington could potentially follow that route because remember, Houston's OC, who was it? Bobby Slowick was a guy who was a head coaching candidate and did a great job with C.J. Stroud. And all of a sudden you get to year 2 and it seems like C.J. Stroud's system has kind of been figured out. The offensive line really struggled. And in terms of Washington, like, I'm not sure what people think about Cliff Kingsbury up there. I feel like he's someone who can walk into a franchise and really present some innovative ideas and get the most out of some players. But he's shown that he can't do that consistently. He can't do that from year to year to year. So I wonder what the shelf life is for Cliff Kingsbury in Washington. And, if he has a successful season in 2025, then he's going to be someone that probably accepts a head coaching gig. And that would be great for Washington because it means they were once again successful. But when we're talking about on-field performance, when we're talking about the record in the win-loss column, with what Washington did last year that was so unexpected, I think it's fair to expect, I should say, some regression on that end. But, if Jayden Daniels can remain healthy, I think that's the biggest X factor. It's hard to expect a large amount of regression if Jayden Daniels is your quarterback and he's taking snaps under center.
Jordan Dajani with us here, covers the NFL for CBS Sports. He joins the Kevin Sheehan Show with Dende sitting in for Kevin here on the Team 980. As we look outside of Washington, Jordan, just at some of the other teams, I know you're based in the Tennessee area. What are the thoughts so far on Cam Ward and some of the expectations that they have for him in year number 1?
The most unheralded number 1 overall pick of all time, right? People forget that Cam Ward got drafted on draft night. They were too busy talking about Shedeur Sanders. But with Cam Ward, it's tough because I don't know if he's necessarily a prospect that can turn a franchise around in year 1, similar to what we saw with Jayden Daniels in Washington. As a prospect, I liked Caleb Williams better than Cam Ward. As a prospect, I like Jayden Daniels more than Cam Ward. As a prospect, I might have liked Drake May even a little bit better than Cam Ward. But one thing I will say about Cam Ward is that he's wired the correct way. You know what I mean? He has a good head on his shoulders. He's someone who's extremely competitive. He's laser focused. He's a really mature player for someone who is entering the league as a first-year player. And I think a lot of that comes from his story, being a 0-star recruit at Incarnate Word, having to transfer to Washington State and then Miami where he had his historical season. So I have faith that he's someone who can be a long-time starter in the National Football League. But the Titans were the worst team in the NFL last year, and they need a lot of additions at a lot of different areas. So when you're talking about expectations, I'd feel great if I came away from the 2025 season saying, you know what, there's something to this kid. He showed the ability to improve over the course of his first NFL season. There's a lot to be asked when it comes to the head coaching and the play calling. But if I can come away saying Cam Ward seems like he's got it, even if Tennessee has a losing record, I'd be pretty satisfied about his prospects heading forward.
What happened with Treylon Burks?
Dude, oh man, I was really excited for this prospect coming out of Arkansas. I thought he could be a game changer, a very versatile offensive weapon. But what clearly happened is his body broke down. The best ability is availability, and Treylon Burks straight up just did not have availability. In fact, I was talking to someone, I think a week ago on Wednesday, and they asked me about Treylon Burks because they knew I was a fan of his play, and I told them that unfortunately, I'm totally out on this kid because, he tore his ACL last year. He's been held to this amount of games over the course of his career. He's just never been able to suit up. And sure enough, in the open stadium practice on Saturday, he goes up for an amazing catch and breaks his collarbone. So that's kind of been the bottom line with Treylon Burks is that he's someone who's been unable to stay healthy. And it's really tough because he was born in the shadows of A.J. Brown, right? He was selected by Tennessee with the pick that they got from the Philadelphia Eagles when the Titans sent A.J. Brown to Philadelphia. And he was never able to live up to those expectations. And, I would love for him to turn it around with another franchise. He, of course, cleared waivers, so he reverted back to the Titans injured reserve, and by all reports, he's someone who's going to get released when he's healthy. But that's the thing, man. The best ability, I should say, is availability, and Treylon Burks just did not have that.
Who do you think is the best team, the best roster going into the season? Is it still Philly?
The best roster, I'm kind of high on the Ravens, to be honest with you. They made an addition like DeAndre Hopkins, who I understand is not a Pro Bowl wide receiver anymore. But if he's someone who can move the chains consistently, I feel like that was something lacking in Baltimore's offense when they got on third downs and they were unable to utilize Derrick Henry. Defensively, they drafted Mike Green out of Marshall, the FBS's reigning sack leader. That's someone who I already have money on to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. If Baltimore can be more aggressive off the edge and Mike Green can be an instant impact player, that's really going to help the Ravens. Lamar Jackson is very aware that this narrative has been born in terms of how he falters and withers when it comes to postseason football. So he is absolutely out on a personal note to extinguish that narrative and get the Ravens to the big game. And looking at their roster right now, and if they can remain healthy, I absolutely think they're capable of doing so.
Is there a team that you think was really good last year that's going to take a bit of a step back in 2025?
Washington. No, I'm just kidding. I wouldn't do that to you. That's tough. A team that would take a step backwards and potentially miss the playoffs or so. I would say off the top of my head, what about the Buffalo Bills? Because if I'm going to be high on the Ravens, that means I'm probably going down on the Buffalo Bills, right? So I would say that, one of the biggest things with Buffalo this offseason was adding wide receiver help, right? Adding weaponry for Josh Allen. That's been a narrative that's been around for a long time. And to some degree, it was surprising that Josh Allen had that MVP campaign when Stephon Diggs, moved away from the Bills. And I'm wondering if they did enough at the wide receiver position to help Buffalo kind of reach that next level. They added a guy named Joshua Palmer from the Los Angeles Chargers, who's a big body perimeter threat. He's kind of an X factor, in my opinion, if Buffalo is going to be someone who reaches the Super Bowl as opposed to Kansas City or Baltimore. So looking at Buffalo, they may be a team that has some kind of regression after going 13-4 last year.
Are you a believer in Chicago under year one with Ben Johnson?
Well, you added that caveat of under year one. Like, there may be some growing pains with Ben Johnson, but I think there's a lot of reason for optimism, right? We saw what Ben Johnson did for the Detroit Lions, who were, the worst NFL franchise earlier this decade. And I would say that Caleb Williams is someone who didn't have any kind of guidance under, who was it, Matt Eberflus and Shane Waldron. We knew that experiment wasn't going to work. And we've heard the stories about him trying to watch film alone without his coaches in the room. And we understood that the offensive philosophy seemed to to switch like the wind, right? It changed week to week, and the offensive leaders on Chicago had to have meetings with their offensive coordinator because they were unsatisfied with how things were going. So if you add an element of consistency when it comes to Caleb Williams, not only his scheme, but his maturity and development as well, that's something that's going to pay dividends in the end, in my opinion. I love what Chicago did in the draft, too. They got Colston Loveland, who I guess a lot of people are comparing to being Chicago's Sam Laporta. That would be really important for Caleb Williams, having that versatile security blanket across the middle. Getting Luther Burden III out of Missouri, who was a lot of people's favorite wide receiver in the draft as well. They added weaponry for this Bears offense. And again, there may be some growing pains, but I think that Ben Johnson was largely responsible for the turnaround that Detroit saw. I understand that Dan Campbell is an incredible leader of men, but Ben Johnson was the true architect for the most powerful offense we've seen in the NFL over the past couple of seasons. So there's great reason for optimism in Chicago.
Do you dabble with any like futures bets, anything of that nature?
It's a good question because I actually don't. Like, I write on it usually sometimes, and I've talked about, making some gambles for offensive rookie of the year, defensive rookie of the year. But when it comes to my own personal payroll, I actually don't shell out too much money for futures. What are you thinking about, though?
Well, I was just curious as if you were looking at a team that had good value for a Super Bowl, or if you were going to be one of the ones. I mean, books are going to, Jordan, they're going to steal from people on people trying to double up on Travis Hunter winning both, because every book has a prop on it. So I was curious about the rookie of the year market and any Super Bowl picks you have.
That's laughable. Yeah, I'm definitely not going to be betting on Travis Hunter to win both of those awards. I will say one team I'm extremely high on from the NFC because they've had a big offseason, and it seems like they are all in for a Super Bowl specifically this year, is the Los Angeles Rams, right? They came so close to hosting the NFC Championship game against Washington if they beat Philly in the snow. And again, they came so close to that. If it weren't for a snowstorm, I wonder if that game would have turned out differently. The Los Angeles Rams at plus 2,000, I believe. So they're still somewhat of a favorite, but that's a team I'm extremely high on. When it comes to offensive rookie of the year, I'm not looking at running backs, I'm not looking at quarterbacks. I'm not looking at wide receivers. I'm specifically looking at running backs. Ashton Genty is the favorite at plus 260. I can, foresee him winning that award, but being the favorite at plus 260, I'm not going to bet on that. But someone like Omarion Hampton with the Los Angeles Chargers at plus 900. We understand that he is working under offensive coordinator Greg Roman, who absolutely loves to run the football. Najee Harris, thankfully survived that fireworks accident, but he obviously got nicked up in the eye. We don't understand what that injury is going to look like or how it's going to affect him moving forward. But regardless, Omarion Hampton is a talent that is capable of stealing touches in Greg Roman's offense, so he has value at plus 900. Along those lines, Travion Henderson with the New England Patriots at plus 2,200. That was a legitimate talent coming out of Ohio State. He's someone who's capable of taking over that backfield for Mike Vrabel as well. And we understand Mike Vrabel is not an offensive mind, but his offenses historically have really relied on running the ball, right? Toting the rock. And I feel like that's someone like Travion Henderson. He presents great value at plus 2,200 as well.
All right, Jordan, I'll get you out of here on this one. We started with Terry. We will end with Terry. Ultimately, do you think a deal gets done before the regular season begins?
I'm going to say yes. And again, I think it's absolutely ridiculous we've gotten to this point. Pay Terry McLaurin. I even put out a tweet on Twitter, right? There's been one constant from the Washington Redskins era to the Washington football team era to the Washington Commanders era, and that's been Terry McLaurin. He's been your leader for you on and off the field. The question has never been, should we pay Terry McLaurin? It's what is that meeting point in the middle? What's that AAV going to look like? I absolutely think Washington should pay him, and I'm going to predict that they do before the start of the regular season.
Jordan, you're the man. I hope you enjoy the rest of your summer, and let's hit that under tomorrow.
Absolutely, Denton. You're the man. Appreciate you.
That is Jordan Dajani, CBS Sports, good enough to jump on with us here on the Kevin Sheehan Show with Dende sitting in for Kevin. Grant Paulsen will be with us in about 15 minutes. We'll talk some training camp. We'll talk a little Major League Baseball trade deadline, potential movers for the Washington Nationals as well. Coming up, ESPN ranked top rosters just by the under 25 talent. Guys under the age of 25. Where did Washington rank? I'll tell you when we get back. It's the Kevin Sheehan Show. Dente sitting in for Kevin on the Team 980. Kevin Sheehan Show. Dent Day sitting in for Kevin here on the Team 980. You can find me on Twitter at the Denton Day. Grant Paulsen will be with us in 10 minutes. Talk a little bit of training camp. Talk a little bit of Major League trade deadline. ESPN put out an article written by Aaron Schatz. Kevin loves Aaron Schatz. DVOA metric. I didn't know that Aaron Schatz was working for ESPN, freelancing. Not sure. But he wrote this article. And they ranked the top rosters based off of their talent 25 and under. I was very skeptical on where Washington was going to rank here.
As was I.
Because they don't have a lot of talent under the age of 25. It's been one of the focal points of the offseason. They are an older roster.
I believe the oldest in the league.
Oldest in the league. Prior to signing Von Miller, adding a 36-year-old did not help that, right? That just only moves you more in the direction of old. It's basically Ron Rivera's fault, if we're being honest. Most teams have a good amount of guys from year to year that were drafted here that stay here. Ron was like a statistical improbability. If you were to try and be as bad as him, you still would have hit on more. Anyway, so they ranked all these teams. I knew that Jayden was going to have a massive upswing in this conversation because he's arguably a top 5 quarterback, where none of the other top 5 quarterbacks, no one else in that conversation is under the age of 25. So I knew that would be a major upswing. Here is how the list went. At number 1 is the Houston Texans. And what they do is they have like a blue chip player section in this, and then they have a notable graduated players, as in guys that are now 26. CJ Stroud under 25, Will Anderson under 25, Derek Stingley under 25, Kamari Lassiter under 25. Pretty good. Stroud obviously is their quarterback. Will Anderson is a great pass rusher. Derek Stingley, for a moment in time, was the highest paid defensive back. And then Kamari Lassiter is a really good player as well. So Houston is number 1. They lost Tank Dell and Juice Scruggs because they got too old. At number 2 is the Seattle Seahawks with Devin Witherspoon, Byron Murphy, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. They are number 2. You could potentially add Jalen Milroe into that conversation once we see how they use him. I don't know how they're going to use him. I imagine he is going to, for the majority of the first half of the season, be in more of a packaged role. They will have certain plays where they will use Jalen Milroe. But right now, Seattle is 2. Number 3 is where we find Washington. Max, I was stunned. I was going to say, all right, let's make the top 10. You could make top 5 because Jayden's so good. I did not anticipate that Washington would be at number 3. They ranked 18 in 2024. That was before everybody knew what Jayden was as a player. But here's the thing that's kind of crazy. They only list 2 blue chip players.
And one of them, I am waiting to call them a blue chip player.
I like Brandon Coleman. He is the other one.
Coleman. But
I don't know. He just changed positions.
Also left Mikey Sanders still off this list.
That was where I was going to go next. I would like a little bit of an explanation.
Respect Mikey.
Because Mikey Sanders still is not on this list. He is in the write-up for Washington. They have his name listed, but they have his name listed pretty low in the write-up. So this is the write-up that Aaron Schatz has for naming Washington the 3rd best roster, judging exclusively based off of their talent that is 25 and under. He says this rank is not all Daniels. LOL. But it's very heavily Daniels. Yes, of course. The 24-year-old quarterback replaced Stroud as the most valuable young player in the NFL after his dominant rookie season. So that is kind of crazy. Just pause here. You get like one more year, Jayden, on this list, and then he's done because he's already 24. Continuing. He ranked 4th in the NFL in QBR at 70.6. We know that. We've talked about that to various extents on this channel and on this station. Tied for 10th in touchdowns at 25 and threw for 3,568 yards. And then, of course, added to that in the postseason. On offense, Daniels is joined by 24-year-old Coleman, who will move from left tackle to left guard this season, plus 21-year-old rookie tackle Josh Connerly Jr., The Commanders have some young skill players, too, with wide receiver Luke McCaffrey, who's 24, and Ben Sinnott, who is 23. Including these guys is, I mean, really, it's like these are the only guys that are under 25 on Washington's roster. We've seen very little of Luke McCaffrey and Ben Sinnott that would make you get like super, super excited. Flashes from McCaffrey. Sinnott was on the receiving end of that Tress Way pass in the NFC Championship, which I was at Honor Brewery. I'm wearing their hat right now. I was at Honor Brewery with Linnell doing the pregame for that. Then we stayed a little bit for the game. Honor Brewery got lit when Tress Way had that completion. It's kind of all we saw, though, from Ben Sinnott. I thought we would see a little bit more, but that's partly because Zach Ertz played really, really well down the stretch, and he and Jayden Daniels had a nice rapport.
People forget about the one preseason catch Ben Sinnott had.
I forget about the one preseason catch he had.
He dragged 3 guys like almost all the way to the end zone. You forgot about that?
I do remember. I remember that now.
It was preseason against the Jets, I believe.
If you could have given me 31 guesses, and I don't know if I would have gotten that. I don't know that I would have, because preseason is
it doesn't matter.
Yeah. This write-up continues. This is the final paragraph here. The Washington defense features less young talent than the offense.
Hey, man.
There's only 5 guys that he mentioned young talent on the offense. But the highlights are cornerback Mike Sanderstill, who is 24, and defensive tackle Johnny Newton, who is 23, to replace veteran Jonathan Allen. So Schatz is a analytic guy, right? He is the guy that is listed as the creator of the DVOA metric that Kevin references all the time, and that most analytic nerds use when breaking down football.
Also, no Trey Amos is mentioned on this list, but
Josh Connerly is mentioned.
Josh Connerly is mentioned, and you go down to the Giants, and Jackson Dart's on the list. Interesting.
You know what I mean? I am
noticing.
I am in fact realizing that. So I'm confused by not having Mikey as a blue chip player.
Yeah.
Because what did you see from Mikey that would lead you to believe that he is just a flash in the pan?
Oh, he got burned by Jamar Chase in week 3 of his rookie year.
Like, at the very least, you just realize he's going to be here for at least a number of years. Is he going to get this big, massive extension? I have no idea. But he was good enough to say there's versatility here, and you are going to, like, you pencil him in as he is going to be a player, like a prime player on the defense in the year 2025. So not mentioning him here is, at least as a blue chip, is a little interesting while you are mentioning Brandon Coleman. And then, as Max pointed out, there's no Trey Amos here. So I'm a little confused by the deciding of which players were going to get mentioned and which were not. It has felt like for a little bit that the national media is not as aware of Mikey Sanderstill as those of us who are in the local media are. It feels like almost he's our little secret, like he's our hidden gem. We are protecting Mikey at all costs, but nobody nationally seems to recognize him because his numbers were good last year. He did get into the conversation late in the season, albeit, but he got into the conversation of Defensive Rookie of the Year to at least challenge a little bit in that market, at least betting wise. So I don't know why he continually gets left off of these things. Like, he didn't even get mentioned in the ESPN write-up about best defensive backs. Not that I thought he was going to be top 10. Not that I thought that at all. But Marshawn Lattimore got mentioned as an honorable mention, or not an honorable mention, just an others receiving votes kind of a deal. But Mikey played better than Marshawn Lattimore did in 2024. Lattimore's a bigger name with a much bigger pedigree in the NFL. But for what we saw on the field, Mikey was better than Lattimore, and he was more significantly on the field. So it feels like he's flying like really oddly under the radar. I'm down with it. It doesn't make, I don't think it's that big of a deal. I like having a best kept secret on defense. And if these offensive coaches are going to go around trying Mikey, please
go right ahead.
Go right ahead.
NFC Championship game.
Like, he is a turnover. He is going to be a turnover creating machine, I think, in 2025, especially if Trey Amos or Jonathan Jones starts outside and you get that flexibility to move Mikey in a couple of different places. It's the Kevin Sheehan Show with Denton Day sitting in for Kevin on the Team 980. When we get back, Grant Paulsen, 106.7 The Fan, to talk Commanders training camp and potential movers for the Nationals on the MLB deadline day tomorrow. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to the Team 980.
All right, here's what's happening on this Wednesday, July 30th. No camp updates today for the Washington Commanders. They have the day off. They will have a walkthrough tomorrow. They're gearing up for joint practices with the New England Patriots starting next week. First preseason game is Friday, August 8th. The camp injury bug is going around the NFL. Here's some training camp updates. Patriots corner Christian Gonzalez left practice early with a limp yesterday. Jordan Schultz reported that he has a hamstring injury that could put week 1 in jeopardy for him. Ravens tight end Isaiah Likely suffered a small foot fracture at the end of practice yesterday that could sideline him for a few weeks. He may miss week 1 as well. Browns quarterback hopeful Kenny Pickett has been sidelined with a hamstring, leaving Joe Flacco, Dylan Gabriel, and Shadur Sanders to fight out the reps among themselves. To baseball, Ronnie Acuna Jr. was removed from last night's game versus the Kansas City Royals. He heads to the 10-day injured list with Achilles tightness. Last night, the Mystics defeated the Chicago Sky 103-86. Sonia Citron was hooping with 28 points on 10 of 15 shooting and 5 of 6 from three-point land. The Nats, they fall to the Astros by a score of 7-4. They're looking to get one back today quite very shortly. It's an early start today. First pitch is at 2:10. Nats on deck with Charlie and Dave at 1:40 on 106.7 The Fan. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live from 10 to 1 and Craig Hoffman from 4 to 7. Don't forget to like the streams and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
Kevin Sheehan Show. Denton Day sitting in for Kevin here on the Team 980. No practice in Ashburn today. They get an off day. They will be back at it tomorrow. Tomorrow, also, Major League Baseball's trade deadline. So joining us now to break down both of those things is our guy, Grant Paulsen. You hear him on 106.7 The Fan. He is also the host of the Bustin' Loose Baseball podcast that you can get wherever it is that you get your podcast. GP, appreciate you making some time for me, my friend. We'll start with the football element. Are you tired of talking about Terry McLaurin every day?
I'm getting there for sure. I guess what's frustrating, honestly, Denton, and it's good to talk to you, bro, is that there's not much changing. So we're talking about it quite a bit daily, as you are, and there's no real development. I don't get the sense, while I do think there's conversations occasionally happening behind the scenes, that a whole lot's getting done. I think two sides are pretty dug in on how they feel. We did have the one massive development initially when he decided not to come to training camp. So he had a couple of day news cycle where that played. And then we had the second big development where he reported to training camp solely to stop getting fined $50,000 at a time. That's why he showed up at training camp, not because a deal was imminent or a whole lot of progress had been made. So, but other than those two updates really over the span of 10 days, it's kind of the same thing. And I think that's what is somewhat maddening about it.
Where is your line in the sand in terms of this needs to be done by this point in time, or eventually, like, his ankle injury just got to fade and you got to get back out on the field?
Yeah, I think my answer to that is the moment that he needs to be on the field so that he can be at max capacity in week one. And I would say it from, the individual perspective that way, from a team standpoint, the moment that his holding out, his holding in, whatever we're calling it, his ankle injury in air quotes, starts to actually make it harder for the team to beat the Giants. When is that? And I don't have that answer. I would imagine it's after the final preseason game and right around cutdown day. But the problem with saying that is, so sure, you're at work, you're at practice for the week leading up to the Giants and you play in the game, but are you in football shape? I know he'll be in great shape, but is he in football shape? So if the answer to that is no, if it takes a little time, and I know Mike Shanahan specifically with receivers, with the routes run and the amount of time he's on the field kind of running around, felt like they needed a couple of week ramp up and some contact. So you probably do need to then practice at some point beyond that first week of the regular season when practice is not overly physical anyway. So then maybe I walk it back another week toward the end of the preseason. So I guess, and I've been trying to thread this needle and figure this out myself constantly. We've talked about this on the show. I think I'm going to say maybe the final week of the preseason, not necessarily to play in the game, but to get some version of camp, some legitimate practice with physicality, with some contact, being jammed at the line of scrimmage, so that he can have 2 weeks leading up to week one. Because remember, I talked about this yesterday on the show. I don't think a lot of people have been mentioning this. They play week one against the Giants, and you win that game, hopefully, with or without Terry McLaurin. But you got grown-ups right after that on a short week. They play the Packers on Thursday Night Football in week 2. So it's not like they play Sunday and then they don't play again until the previous Sunday. With basically 4 days after the season starts, they're going to have played 2 football games. So if he's not ready for week 1 because he comes back that week, it's not going to be that different for week 2. And now you're talking about having missed a good chunk of the first half of the season.
Yeah, that's a great point, and that is very, very alarming. Are you still under the belief, I should say, that a deal is going to get done at some point?
I am, only because of the common sense to me that is, there is just nothing to be gained for either side by not getting something done. Now, I'm using zero evidence of what has actually happened. Right? Like, there's nothing taking place that makes you think that they're closing in on a deal, because I genuinely believe Terry McLaurin and his agent are arguing that his age should not be held against him because the experience level, number of years in the league, mileage on the tires, is not that of someone who's normally his age. And they're probably right about that. But the team is right that the age seems more significant than that, because more often than not, players start to hit a wall into their young 30s at wide receiver. So they can't even agree on what's relevant. Like, everyone's talking about the Cortland Sutton comp and the idea that he got paid at $23 million. And look, McLaurin's a more productive player. Denton, this.
Yeah.
He's a more durable player. You know that too. But they're the same age. And there's this question as to like how much of a factor is this going to be in what's going on with Terry McLaurin? Well, the team and the player can't even figure out what the comps are. I think that the agent wants the comps to be what number one receivers are paid. And you take past number one contracts, like in his mind, what Jamar Chase got earlier this offseason is relevant. What Justin Jefferson got last year isn't, because the cap has gone up and you need to account for that. And there's an attrition rate to that. Whereas the team is saying what's relevant is Mike Evans. What's relevant is Cortland Sutton. And so they can't agree on that. But I still think McLaurin has no real choice but to play eventually. I don't think he's the type of guy that's going to essentially, I don't use this word often, but, fake some injury to then go into the season to miss games to try to accrue the season on the injured reserve or something. And the team needs him, dude. You've been out at practice.
Yeah.
Without him, this receiver room is a shell of itself. They can't win the games they want to win and be where they want to be at the end of the year without him.
Yeah, they need it. Like, it's fun in games where they're running around in shells and not really going hard. But once you start going hard against the defense, it's very clear they need him. And speaking of being out of practice, Grant, as we kind of pivot away from the exclusive Terry talk, you've been out there almost every single day, if not every single day. Who are some of the names that have really jumped off of the field when you're watching?
So the easy one that everybody's talking about is Ja'Cory Merritt, who I would start with, just because he plays a position where I think there's some wiggle room to make the roster and maybe even to get touches if he shines in the preseason. I always stop short of going hard in the paint, celebrating running backs early in camp, because they're not being tackled. And really, until a day or two ago, they weren't even wearing pads, so there wasn't even thudding. So, I would say put this one in pencil. Having said that, I understand why everyone's so fascinated by him. When you watch him, there is an explosiveness, what I would consider like a twitch, that they don't have with Brian Robinson, that Austin Eckler at this point of his career doesn't have to the extent that he did several years ago. Now, Eckler's still an outstanding player in his role as a pass protecting, passing down, third down back, catching the ball to the backfield. And he could do some things on the ground. As you saw last year, he was their leading rusher for most of the season, yards per carry. But there's room on first and second down, I think, for somebody to take some carries away from Brian Robinson if he's not a lot better this year. And that somebody could be Krosky Merritt. I've also, if you want to stick with the young theme, I really like what I've seen from Trey Amos and the cornerback room in general. I think Amos, who's long and looks the part, looks to me confident and comfortable. I've seen him play in zone and doing some good things in some 11-on-11 work. I think Lattimore, while I don't know if he's ever going to be Marshawn Lattimore All-Pro again, Pro Bowler again, I think he looks like he's moving a lot better than last year. I think Jonathan Jones at corner has had a pretty good camp. So that position has excelled and stood out to me. And I'll give you one other name of a guy I want to watch come game time in preseason. Luke McCaffrey has done well in camp. I've noticed him a bunch in 11-on-11 work, running routes, getting open, making catches. I think he is a guy that just generally coming in to this camp, I thought had a chance to make a big leap, because he was semi-new to wide receiver still compared to guys drafted where he gets drafted as a former college quarterback last year. And I thought he was drinking through a fire hose a little bit. And ultimately, he ended up basically just returning kicks. But he's the kind of guy now, second year, further into the development as a player at the position, the bloodlines of working out all offseason with his brother and other NFL stars. I would not be surprised if he looks like a much different, better football player this year.
Talking with Grant Paulsen here on the Kevin Sheehan Show. Dent Day sitting in for Kevin on the Team 980. What stood out to you the most and the biggest difference from Jayden now to where he was last year?
He's obviously more physically stout. I mean, the arms, the shoulders just look bigger. I don't know about you. I'd be curious to get your thoughts. I don't notice it in the lower half as much, like his legs or anything, but I do think his arms and shoulders and things look bigger. My guess is just within the pocket, taking shots, getting hit as you throw. Like, he wanted to get a little bit more substantial physically. I think he did that. But I think he's had a very good training camp. It's funny because you've heard, well, the defense is head of the offense a few times lately, or the secondary is beating the receivers or what have you. I think for the most part, and this is mostly earlier than pads came on, but Daniels was just super sharp and crisp and knew where to go with the ball, and he was decisive. And there were a couple practices where when the ball hit the ground, it was notable. He's just accurate. I don't think you could take a lot out of this yet from the quarterback position, but little things, man. Like just the way the ball comes off his hand better than everybody else's. And if you're watching like warm-ups, if you're out there as a fan in the next few days when they have open access, when you see them throwing into the nets, most of the time Jayden Daniels wins that game. You know, he's just and he should be. I used to say this about Alex Ovechkin, Denton. When I would take people to hockey games to watch the Caps that hadn't gone to a lot of hockey games, I would say, which one do you think's the best player? And with Ovi, they could kind of point him out. I think Jayden Daniels doing drills next to Sam Hartman and Josh Johnson and, you know, the quarterback room with Marcus Mariota, he just stands out as clearly being different and unique, which he should.
To me, Grant, he just looks so much more comfortable. Like, just the way that he is at practice, he looks like a veteran, but not in like an arrogant sense. It's just because he's so aware with everything that's going on. And because he's doing all this unseen work that Dan Quinn has talked about, he just feels so ahead of everybody else.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I just think it's natural too. Last year, I mean, there's these unwritten rules, right? You haven't played yet. There's only so much you can do as a leader. You don't want to be overbearing, or you don't want guys looking at you from side-eyed kind of going, who does this guy think he is? And it just feels like it's his team, especially, look, on offense, Terry McLaurin's not out there. So he's been the de facto field general, so to speak. You know, he's been the guy who's been here the longest, sweated the most, bled the most. And there's a meritocracy, kind of an order to that, I think, where he kind of calls the shots. Well, he's not out there. And Jayden's coming off a year where he just took you to the NFC Championship game. So understandably, it's to me, it's like if you're in high school and you're a freshman on day one, you're kind of wide-eyed. You don't know where everything is. It's nervous. By the time you're a senior, you know, you're walking around like you own the joint. And that's kind of the feeling I get after a year of running the show with Jayden Daniels now showing up as one of the stars of the league.
All right, Grant, I'll get you out of here on this one. The team has signed Von Miller at 36 years old. How many sacks does he have for Washington this year?
Oh, that's fun. Let's see. I'm going to say he has 7 sacks this year. I think he's going to be very effective. Someone might hear that and they'll think I'm down on him or something. I'm not at all. He's going to be situationally used, passing downs only. I think they're going to spell him even early game passing downs to have him as a potential closer. I think anything more than 5 sacks is a win. I think if he has 6 or 7, which is kind of where I think he's going to be, he'll be super impactful. And I really believe that he's going to make a big difference for this defense. I think he's still got game left. He was the fastest guy off the ball in terms of, you know, at the snap last year at his position. Still, he'd be a next-gen stats. His win rate, if you look at PFF and ESPN's categories in that metric, top 10 in the league. So he can still get after the quarterback. I believe that.
Grant, appreciate the time, my friend. Have a good show today. I'll see you back out there at camp next week.
All right. Yeah, man. See you, buddy.
That is Grant Paulsen of Grant and Danny here on 106.7 The Fan. I realize now I'm up against a break, so like we got to get out of here. I realized I didn't ask him a single question about the Major League Baseball trade deadline and the potential of Mackenzie Gore moving. You know what? We'll get around to it tomorrow. We'll have some baseball people on tomorrow to see if that is a real possibility of Mackenzie Gore getting moved. It was floated out to me on this show the last time I was filling in for Kevin, so like a week and a half ago, by Ryan Clary of the Locked On Nats podcast. As we get closer and closer, we will see if there is anybody making a move for one Mackenzie Gore. That's going to do it for us today. We are hoping to have a player after practice call in tomorrow, so we will keep you posted on that. Once I know who that player is, I will tweet it out, so you got to follow me at the Denton Day on Twitter. That's it for me. No Chris Russell today. Leno Willingham sitting in for Chris. He comes your way next on the Team 980.
Stay cool, friends.